Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the June 2026 DRC meeting. The DRC is a subcommittee of the Historic Zoning Commission, and the meeting is informal and designed to guide applicants through the COA for projects within the city's historic districts in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines. Applicant participation in DRC is voluntary but highly recommended, and any changes or suggestions taken by the applicant based on these discussions with the DRC are the applicant's choice, but the DRC makes no representation as to whether any changes or suggestions made during the meeting will be approved by the voting body, the Historic Zoning Commission. This afternoon, we have 10 items on the agenda. When the item's called, please introduce yourself and generally describe your item in about 2 to 3 minutes. All right. Item number 1, discussion of rear window and door alterations at 819 West Main Street. Candy Westbrook. Miss Westbrook, if you'll come up, please. These microphones have a little button. It'll turn green when you're on. If you'll hit that for us, please.
I got it green.
Green means good.
And
Thank you.
this is Adam Caldwell. He's my contractor.
Okay.
So he's free to answer any questions.
Okay. So tell us what what your plan is here for your project.
I'm redoing a sunroom on the back of the house. We've been in our house for 35 years. It was this way when we moved in. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of sliding glass doors. I'm just going to go back with 2 sets because of the way the room is arranged, and eliminate 3 sets with windows and new doors, of course, new windows, and there are transoms above the all the sliding glass doors, and I was hoping to put in, since the back of the house, as you can see there, have the grid windows across the back. There are other pictures better, but was trying to keep that type of pattern along the back of the house. This room is not seen except for one little tenth of a sliver of pie from 9th Avenue. I've gone on 9th Avenue. Those are the pictures on the sidewalks, down the middle of the street to make pictures. And I would really like to do the doors with the, help me, Adam, the interior grids, the
Yes.
GBD.
I think that's
the,
correct.
the grids inside the door. And then the grids would, and also the same look with the transoms. So that's what I'm looking at to do, to have it inside. I did get another bid showing the, and I'll butcher this and I apologize, I'm not that technical on all of this, where you have the solid piece of glass and you have the frame on the outside, and it changed the look of the window as well, and especially the look of the transom. But the one that has it in between the glass, it's cleaner, it's easier to clean, and I'm just going to be honest, it's not as expensive, and we've got an old house that you just write checks to. But it was the look that I would like, and clean it up and just make it look better, because the windows look terrible and the doors look terrible. So
How old is all of this
The back-
enclosure here? Is it an old
this
carport
room,
or something? Yeah.
It was an old carport.
Okay.
It was before us. It is not over 50 years old, but we've
Okay.
been there 35.
Okay.
So
it's
it was the owners before
Yeah.
us that it was a carport and they closed it in.
okay.
So that was before us.
Understood. Okay. Let's hear from staff here. Elizabeth has some comments for us, and then we'll discuss up here.
Thank you. So staff had administratively reviewed the replacement of the rear non-historic sliding doors with new sliding doors and windows. And the submitted windows proposed the grill between the glass muttons and did not align with the guidelines. The applicant would like to discuss the options of using the GBG on the doors and windows, as there's one other example on the house and is located on the rear and has limited visibility. Additionally, in the areas surrounding the windows, the doors that will be infilled with windows instead, the other infill material is proposed to be siding. So discussion of this about if it is an appropriate material to infill with. would be appreciated. Additionally, if the applicant would, I think had previously mentioned, maybe discussion, an option of no grids on windows as well. So that would be appreciated as the guidelines recommend the TDL or SDL windows, and to avoid using the grill between the glass windows. Thank you.
Okay.
And Elizabeth, thank you. I forgot to mention the siding. Thank you.
Yes.
It
So
would be
this,
the siding to match the original house.
and all this, what is painted white here around the openings, what is that material? Is it just trim or is it
It's a finished plywood.
just plywood? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, let's hear from some of our board members here. Any thoughts, anybody?
So you're saying that you would use siding around these windows that you're
Yes,
replacing?
ma'am. When we close
Okay.
in from the bottom, we would try to keep the same siding
Okay,
profile all
yeah.
the way around.
Okay,
Just bring the front of the house back.
right,
Right.
right. So you'd continue the same height and all of the other details about it?
Yes, ma'am.
To the back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
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 Mary, anything?
And there's one set of sliding doors that face the side street 9th, is that right?
Ye-
Those.
Okay, that is in the breakfast area. I'm sorry,
Uh-huh.
that is in the kitchen right there.
Okay.
That one's been replaced for a while. And that's what was there, so I went back with the original of what was
Right.
already there. And that is the grid in the
And
glass.
then is there
And
one?
that faces the
Is there
night
one
avenue.
more on that side?
There are two right now.
On that side and
But
two
they're
on the back?
fence, but the fence is around it.
Right.
Mm-hmm, right. That one in the kitchen.
Now, those will go back. Those will be windows right there.
Right. There's four pieces, four
Mm-hmm.
panels. So I'll start with the right. Panel number one will be a window.
Okay.
Transom would match. Then number two and number three will
Mm-hmm.
be walled up on the inside to make a wall for a mantel. And then number four will be a window, the air conditioner will be gone.
Gotcha.
And the transom will be made to look like the first one in the window one.
Okay.
I was just
other
hoping to
thoughts?
keep the same look. I would like to clean it up. These aluminum blinds have been there a lot of years. The doors have, the seal has broken, they're all faded. It's just ugly.
Yeah. Anything else, Mary?
You don't see them. I'll put that out there.
Yeah,
But we've never, as far as I know, approved.
GBGs? Yeah, I mean, it's explicitly excluded from our guidelines. It says not to use them.
that's
In
the
any
dividers
historic-
between
yeah.
the class.
Yes. Yeah, it says to use the simulated divided light, which is, on the outside of the glass, but it's one big piece, or true divided light, which is
Yeah.
individual panes of glass.
Yeah.
And that's just the way and I don't know that we've ever, not since I've been on here, approved SDLs, the GBGs, grills between the glass. And it's not allowed in most historic districts in the whole United States. And that comes from guidance from the National Park Service and the Department of Interior. That's where most jurisdictions get their rules for historic districts, so.
So if you use the panes, like you were saying, or the frame on the outside, and it changes the whole look,
It should be the same look, just the grills are on the outside. If
The bid-
depending on what brand you are, and we don't really get
Okay.
into the exact brand.
okay, it will change the look of the transoms because you're putting a frame around the inside of the transoms over the doors, and it changes that completely, the look of the transom.
You might look at some other brands and see, because it shouldn't change the glass area at all. The glass area should stay exactly the same, and the grills just go over the glass. Unless they're direct set windows or something. I mean, that's,
Angela, may I pass this over?
yeah.
This will be, you go ahead. Adam.
When you put
Yeah,
the
so-
grids on the outside, the transom and the doors, they won't line up then. There's gonna be a difference in them, the way they're actually constructed.
Right, yeah. Yeah, like I said, the different brands do it differently. This is just one brand and the way they do it. But generally speaking, the door should be thicker stiles and rails in the window because it takes more beating. So I'd be surprised if the window somehow got thicker stiles and rails than a door. But yeah, and they look like they line up here.
The windows will line up, the doors will not. The doors and the transoms will not line up by adding the frame.
Yeah, and we don't, like I said, we don't get into what brands you pick and stuff, but there's ways to do it. Certainly, you want to see that?
I think, one thought I'm having, have you considered doing 2 sets of French doors with the solid in between? You know, that you wanted to get some solid wall, I think I heard you say. So has there been consideration to doing a pair of French doors on either side of the solid wall that's going to have siding on it?
The way the room's laid out, we've opened that sliding
need
glass
the
door for
sliding
35 years, and when you walk in with the load of anything, that goes straight to the pool table. When you have a 4-foot door versus the French door being 3 foot, you've cut down on your space, and then we're just used to it. And also the way the room is laid out and the
Right.
way the room is arranged, the door can open out, it can open in. It's going to alter that.
I've, having lived in so many houses, she knows. I have had French doors where one was fixed
Right.
and just one open
Yeah.
and closed. So,
But then, like I said, that cuts down on you lose, 3 foot, 4 foot, you'll lose a foot. And then and we're so used to just coming in, sliding glass door, change old habits after 35 years.
Yeah. So these are 8 foot wide, 6'8" tall. Is that what I'm?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think there's certainly options out there, and the window folks can work with you on getting everything lined up. I've seen it done and done it myself a million times, and again and again. So they can line all that up if you ask them to do it, and they've done a pretty good job here. Whatever this drawing is, the center style's just a little different, but
Oh, well, that's the ones,
That's the originals.
yeah, that's the one with the grids between the doors.
it says SDL, simulated divided light, at the top right here. Yeah, so that's simulated divided light is what the guidelines would recommend.
But the bid with the ones that have the frame will not line up. The vertical line will line up. It's just the ends of the windows, of the transoms.
I think the actual glass pieces will be, they're a little shorter on the inside.
On the
of
inside of the
transoms.
transoms. Yeah. And like they'll make a window that is just one big long transom with the fat divider in the middle. I mean, there's ways to do it. So the I don't know. I mean, we've never approved the grills between the glass ever.
Okay.
And I don't anticipate that receiving favorable feedback or votes when it comes to voting meetings. So I would relook at all that. And but I don't have an issue with the sliding doors. I can see Sometimes swinging doors just ruin furniture layouts and all kinds of
Yeah.
things.
They
So
do.
sliding door, totally fine.
I was only suggesting that from if you were looking at options that might be affordable. That was an
Yeah.
issue.
And what is the overall head height? Do you know of that top transom?
It is, I believe, 16 inches.
Okay. So, but from the grade, is it 8 feet tall or something?
Well, that's 6'8", and then there was a foot, so it's about 8 feet to the bottom of them.
Yeah. And you might look at losing the transoms, just do big sliders and make them taller. And then you don't have to worry about transoms at all. And it simplifies a lot of trim details too later because it's just window. And if you're going to reside it all, then you've got a simpler look, but you just add one more light in that grill and it probably fills the space. You don't have to try and line anything up. They just stand on their own. Make the room look more grand anyways because it has real tall doors. But this is something we have to look at all the time with all these trying to line up grills and having transoms over and under, and it's hard to line up. I've been there. And like staff said, I think the guidelines would support no grills too. Because I think the front of the house has no grills. But by the time you get to the back of your house, I think there's a lot of grill work and some of those additions and things have been done over time. So I think you've got precedence for either variety, but I'd recommend looking at the simulated divided light. Unless you want to do true divided light, that's if you think SDL is expensive,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
they'll be exorbitant. The SDL is a good option, and I know how it is trying to clean between those things. It's a lot easier, but in a historic district, they're just not appropriate usually. So I'm going to hand this back to you, Madeline, if you'll pass it back around. Any other comments, anybody?
No.
Anything on the layout, how it sits?
Well, I would just say, I think your suggestion of the taller door,
I think that would be
It might be
amazing.
cheaper.
Really
Might be cheaper than
attractive.
buying separate units.
And I do think the effect, especially on the interior, would
Would be
be very
amazing.
positive.
Well, and your house is of a very grand scale in terms of height.
Oh, yes.
And so anything to draw that a little more vertical is probably going to make it look more appropriate with the original part of the house than smaller piecemeal kind of glass. But you get to design your place. These are just ideas. So, all right. Anything else, anybody?
No.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item number 2. Discussion of installation of an awning and fence barrier at 412 West Main Street. Cam Goodwin? How you doing? Welcome. If you want to tell us a little about your project, and then we'll hear from staff on some of their feedback.
Yeah, sure. So we own Stable Reserve Distillery in downtown Franklin, right between McCree's Pub.
You got your green button on? You go ahead and turn them both on if they're not.
Sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Going to start over. So, we own Stable Reserve Distillery right between McCree's Pub and Walton's Jewelry. We're already approved for an outside dining area with a barrier, which is there now. So that's the original picture there that you see. So right now we just have a hedgerow and planters to serve as that barrier. We'd like to change it out to a couple of, these are just conceptions right here for discussion purposes, but we'd like to add an awning to the outside. To my knowledge, I think on our side of the street there, we're the only business without an awning. Red Pony has them, Walton's does, McCreary's, you keep going down through there. We do have awnings already on the building that were original from a long time ago, I think, when we bought the building. We also own the building. So, yeah, there they are right there. So I think it'd just be something consistent with what's on the building is what we're looking for. And then wanted to talk about logo options on the awning itself. We just had a couple of ideas there. And then from the barrier perspective, the planters that are, the existing planters that are there are just not very efficient because they take up probably 3 feet of our space from seating area. So we would like to change it out to what's consistent with next door at McCreary's and several other places around, the square and everything, to make a rail there. And what we would like to have is a small kind of, I would say 6 to 8 inch bar that goes across that with bar stools, and then have seating behind it. There's enough space for both of that, and still, keep our distance from that tree that we need to keep and everything like that. So the picture that you have up right now is probably most consistent with what we would like to accomplish. The other thing with the awning is, being able to have people outside during, rain, but also the sun actually comes up from this side. And, as we're looking at the picture, and the seating right on the inside of the window during, morning to noon is almost unbearable to sit at. So it's really necessary for us to have an awning on the outside just for business purposes. So anyways, wanted to bring this up for discussion. Our goal is to, once we actually submit, is to have a streamlined process. So just really want feedback from staff and y'all to tell us, we'd like to kind of go with this at one try and not have a whole lot of back and forth, obviously. So
Sure.
the last slide, I know we're talking about logos. Tom Beckby, I think, was the latest one that put an awning up right down the street from us.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have maybe our name across the front, and then a logo, like maybe our horse logo on the side, like this one is, something like that. So also up for discussion. So.
Okay, let's hear from staff, please.
Thank you, and we appreciate the applicant coming to DRC for the proposed awning. So just to highlight a few of the items, the staff would like feedback about the proposed placement, as it is below the cornice and does not align with the placement of awnings on adjacent buildings, and the length of the awning as it is centered above the storefront windows, but not above the main entrance and the secondary office space that's right next to it in that same storefront design. The use of a proposed closed-end awning does not align with the guidelines. However, closed-end awnings are seen on the building, so feedback about whether this is appropriate for this specific storefront would be appreciated for the applicant. If the awning is approved below the cornice in the existing band sign, the number of signs would exceed the recommended maximum of 3, and the replacement of an awning below a band sign is slightly unusual for Main Street in Franklin. For the permanent fencing for the enclosure of the patio space, the element would be reviewed as either front yard fencing, which has a maximum height of 3 feet, or as a streetscape element. Permanent enclosures are not common on Main Street, but it is seen next door at McCreary's with a much simpler design with less vertical elements, and is also seen elsewhere at Mellow Mushroom and at Harpeth Square. Additional information about the proposed height is needed to confirm if this would align with front yard fencing, and feedback about the use of a permanent enclosure in this space would be appreciated, as it's not commonly seen on Main Street. So understanding if it's maintaining the traditional character of Main Street would be great. And just additional information that we'll need to confirm about the awning is the angle and the clearance to make sure it maintains 8 feet of clearance underneath. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's hear from some commissioners, please. Anybody have any thoughts on this one?
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, did you speak to the logo?
So either one could be appropriate. We didn't get the dimensions on there, but the guidelines recommend not to exceed 25% of the awning face or 60% of the valance with signage.
Okay.
So
Essentially, what I'm hearing you say is that we need to see more, really some more pictures would be very valuable to see in terms of how it fits in with the rest of with the neighbors, is how I'm seeing it. Would be very helpful.
Well, it sounds to me like it's more so the dimensions. Like
for
the
sure.
more dimensions, the better. And so height of railing, front to back on the patio space, dimensions of the wording on signage on the awning. Is that everything?
And the actual design that's actually being proposed for the railing. 'Cause-
Yeah, specs on that would be great. But every dimension you could offer would be really good.
And that's 3 feet tall is what we need on the fencing?
It sounds like that's the maximum, right?
It's front yard
From the
fencing, that's
guidelines
the
For
3
front
feet.
yard fencing, but this could also be considered a streetscape element,
Okay.
which does not have any specific
have specs.
requirements
Okay.
for
So-
height.
How is that
Right.
determined? Whether or not it's streetscape or front yard fencing?
Well, you all could assist with determining that.
We can
um,
determine
Okay,
that.
gotcha.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
it's not too tall, you're saying?
I
Not
guess we're not
necessarily, we're
certain.
asking.
So, yeah, whatever you all, if you want to give us the guidelines, then
Yeah.
we'll go with that next, and then provide.
Well,
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're
what I'm
asking
seeing
for
here is you've kind of got bar stools behind it,
Yeah.
Yep.
which would tell you it's a 42-inch counter.
Probably.
And you might want something on top so stuff doesn't get pushed off or rolled off. So
Sure.
it, is it 48 or are you getting counter height stools, which now would be 30 inches and probably
Right.
36 tall, which would meet both guidelines
Yeah,
probably.
I
So
think-
it's just it's a matter of, those details do matter to us and probably to Codes. Jared, you came up, did you have something you wanted to?
It's not necessarily code related. My question would be, have you reached out to ABC or the liquor board as far as what their guidelines are? Because you have to have specific barriers for the state requirements if you're having alcohol served outside and how you're keeping people contained. So that would
Yes.
be something to touch on with
Okay.
the
Yes.
board.
Yeah, we're already approved for that with our existing barrier with the
With an
hedgerow.
attorney, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and you should also be able to have a 36-inch railing with your bar height at 32 and have maybe like 28-inch stools or shorter
Yeah,
stools.
the counter stools instead of a
Right.
bar
Yeah,
stool.
I think on that,
Shorter
this
counter
was just,
stools.
obviously just a rendering. So I think what we're looking for is guidance from you guys before we actually submit the
Sure.
actual,
Right.
what are the rules or what are the
Yeah.
guidelines that we need to comply with? I mean, can we have a 48 inch or does it need to be 3 feet? That's what we're asking from you
Right.
guys, I think, today.
It sounds like it needs to be 3 feet, right?
Well, I think the
Unless
first thing
it's
is we're kind of determining, one, if it's appropriate or not to even be here, right?
Right.
And we have some precedent on this main street, but not a ton. There's few and far between, so there's that. And then secondly, is kind of this height thing. I think if we determine that it's a streetscape element, I wrote it down, streetscape element, then there's not necessarily any requirements to that. I'm not familiar with what alcohol boards and ABC or whoever might require for heights, but if there's a planter with fake bushes in it, then
Yeah.
it can't be that high. I don't know what the rules are there. Jared, go ahead.
It wouldn't be city requirements, and as far as my knowledge, I don't know that they have specifics about height. That's what I was asking y'all. If you've already reached out to them, and if you have that knowledge, that you can kind of tell the board if they have, like, it has to be 4 feet. That'd be nice to share. But as far as my knowledge, last time I reached out to the board, they just said they have to be contained. So if there is specific guidance on how the people need to be contained as far as specific heights and lengths and all that, it'd be nice to know, just so y'all could make a good decision.
Sure.
But as far as city-adopted codes, we do not have any required height with anything like that. They don't even have to be there for us.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there does have to be a barrier, just speaking
Barrier,
from
right.
experience,
Right.
Sure.
because that's why we have the planters
Lighting
there.
crews.
That's right.
And nobody's allowed to consume alcohol outside of that barrier. So
Sure.
that keeps people contained. So it doesn't matter if it's a fence or a hedgerow or whatever it is. It
They know
keeps
they can't
people
leave.
There's some
contained
barrier.
in your area.
But
Yeah.
to his point, it may be good just to
Absolutely.
double check if there's any other requirements as far as height goes, because that may be telling for us as far as our guidelines, whether it's front yard fencing or,
Streetscape.
yes.
Mary, go ahead.
Well,
You
I
had
was
something to
gonna
say.
As far as preserving the historic character of Main Street, I think this is heavy-handed. The other places where we have outside drinking, it's just more tables and chairs, softer look. I don't mind. I think you could figure out if you wanted the bar look, but you can get bar stools in all different heights. And I would want to see the railing lightened up. I think we're wanting to keep Main Street looking like a shopping dining district. And this, if my acid test is, if 3 or 4 other people did this, what would that look like? And I do think it would bring a change to the streetscape. So I would just be for
Yeah,
I don't think it's
I
not
agree.
as heavy-handed.
I don't think it's much different than right next door McCreary's. They actually almost extend their
Well, yeah,
exact
look at
look.
McQuarrie's.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
look
so-
at the seating, and look how light the rail is.
yeah. So
Yeah,
Would
just-
that be better, you
a
think?
a similar
Yes.
railing to
Really?
that? Okay.
Wider.
You're kind of talking
just-
about the railing. look.
Yes,
Yeah.
just not as heavy.
I mean,
Gotcha.
that's pretty simple,
Right.
kind of fat tube steel. So
Yeah.
if you did something just slender, I mean, there's almost like wrought iron, real thin, doesn't need a ton of pickets
Yep.
because
Sure.
nobody can fall out. Well, depends how much they have to drink, but the point is
Better
not
not
that there's a falling hazard. It's a containment thing. So just
Right.
being really light-handed and. I think you can play into your whole Stable
do
Reserve
too.
brand with they've got some really nice wrought iron looking pieces that come from King's Metals or whoever. There's these catalogs and you can pick out your parts and pieces so it looks like fine wrought iron, but it's all pre-made
But you don't have
stuff.
to have so much.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting doing the same thing. I don't think that's your answer.
Right.
No.
But that's just the more light look
Yeah.
of the other
Yeah.
places.
Okay.
I really do feel like it's always the more information, the better. So
Absolutely.
if you have pictures of McCrary's railing, Mellow Mushrooms railing, the dimensions, depth, width, height of the awning and of the railing,
Yeah.
and provide specs of the railings you're proposing, it'll be pretty easy.
We can
as
get
long as
all of
we're
that. Yeah,
staying
we just
within the
wanted all
guidelines.
our requirements from you all first, and then we can get
Yeah.
detailed, like,
Right.
this is what, I guess we can't have
Absolutely.
a closed-in awning.
That's
Is
what
that
she
what I
said.
heard?
Well,
yeah.
it's. I think there's a bigger discussion about does most awnings span the entire width of the
the
shotgun
space.
suite, right? And
So
what
we
you
are-
all have shown, it's kind of truncated a little bit because there's another door there, right? And
So
it's
we
like,
can move it all the way across?
well, I don't know the answer. Do you own all that whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
so
you look
it's-
at the awnings, they're usually like between. So if you look at Red Pony there,
Right.
you'll see they have a big pilaster that's double height, and it's between those. It fills the whole space, and
Okay.
some have end caps
What's
or ends, some don't.
what's a little different on our building is the right door there. If you zoom in, actually is a financial advisory office
Right.
above us.
Right. And they would be
Stable
entitled to
Reserve.
put something on your awning too, as signage, right? As a separate tenant.
What's that?
You wouldn't have to have something on the
Right,
awning
but
from
they
them, but they
could.
could, if they needed to relocate the existing hanging sign, they could relocate it underneath the awning
Okay.
to hang from.
Now,
And there's the other thing that's an important point is that I think you have this big gold Stable Reserve
Yeah.
Yes.
banner. You've got a sign that's on your glass that
Right.
counts. I think
Yeah.
you have a sandwich board sign out front. You're only allowed 3 signs total. So that's
Right.
one thing they cued in on was most of the awnings start above your gold stable reserve, so that sign would go
Would come
away.
up where the lettering is.
Yes, it would go up to basically your brick line up there is where it would start. Now,
Right.
you may decide, well, I'd rather have our gold lettering if we would consider putting the awning lower like this, but then you would either lose your sandwich sign, your glass sign.
Yeah.
You can only have three.
Right.
We'd lose the glass on.
Yeah, so it's, those are the things you have to
Yeah.
decide, and staff can help you
Sure.
guide you like, okay, here's our priorities. If we have to lose one, it's this. The ends, I think our guidelines just say they don't recommend using the ends, right? And that's usually because they just go from stem to stern and there's not a whole lot of end to see. But I don't know when or how that other awning was done with the logos on the
Tom
side.
Rigby.
Yeah, but those count as signs too.
That was last
In
year.
Oh,
some-
that does count as a separate sign?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that was this time last year.
Yeah.
That was
It looks
Is it-
great.
go ahead.
I thought what they did was
Elizabeth?
great.
Yeah, so they refaced an existing awning structure, so they were able
Right.
to go back in with their closed-end awning, and all of the signage is on the balance, so it was counted towards that.
Okay.
So,
So you're allowed 60% of the valance. So as long as you're not supposed to have the ends, but they already had one. But you could use that if your awning's very long, 60% of that little valance that's at the bottom, you could put stable reserve and your logos on
On the
each
sides.
far corners,
Yeah.
but not necessarily the ends because we don't recommend doing ends.
Where would you think things would stand if we tried to put an awning below the existing stable reserve sign lower?
I don't know. I've seen it done in other towns just like that. I mean, I've been to Boston has them like that. New York has them like that. Baltimore has it like that. And then I've seen some above too. Just mostly in Franklin, they're mostly above. Almost all of them, if I recall. So that's the only thing is like, well,
You don't know where things
Franklin's
would kind
kinda-
of fall on that?
yeah, Franklin's kind of the, see, if you look at all the neighbors, it's like, oh yeah, they are above.
I think keeping that consistency, I think another thing too is, I don't know that I would jump right to, this is personal opinion, I don't know that I would jump right to removing the glass signage before the signage above, because with consistency, everybody takes the awning above where you have, like Tyler mentioned, above where you have the gold signage, and you have the office to the right.
I know, I
So-
kind of wondered about putting this, what we have on the window on the front instead of
Of
stable,
the
like, so
awning.
it's not redundant.
But then also keeping the glass signage so they don't try walking into the law office,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and there's, and if you look at Walton's there, their kind of fascia valance there is deep. Right? And I don't, and yours on your rendering is a lot more shallow in the rendering, and we know it's not a real thing yet, but if you need some valance to move that stable reserve sign down, again, you're allowed 60%. Then so you have options, but it is a give and take. It's like, well, if we do this, we need to cull back here, and vice versa. It's going to be a negotiation between the signage. That's why it's kind of tied together. How are y'all feeling about above or below the line? Is there any strong reactions to that?
Which line?
Well, where it says stable reserve there in
Right.
gold, everybody else's actual awning goes up above that and covers that.
So you
I
would
think
lose
it-
that.
Yeah,
I
you'd
think
lose that
keeping-
sign.
I think keeping that
I
consistency
like
would
it.
be good.
I think it's a very attractive.
You like
Right.
it below.
I do.
I like the way
I
it
mean-
looks too. It is just
And I'm thinking
different.
with us having the awnings above, we're already a little different on the street.
Right.
It's gonna look a little silly to have it so close to those two above, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
But that's just my instinct.
But
I
I
don't
like
know.
the way
I-
this looks.
Yeah.
I'm
I
like, oh,
almost
it's
feel like in
I
the
do,
left,
I think the way it looks is great. I think you've got a building that's been tremendously monkeyed with, so considering it a little different makes sense to me.
yeah.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
know. I kind of feel like a couple of things. I feel like the picture on the left that we're looking at, we're only looking at that building. If you were to pull back and
Right.
see that awning
That's
with
true.
every other awning at the brick line, I feel like that might look odd. The second thing is, if your signage you have the awning and the signage is way back instead of on the front, it might get lost.
I think,
That's true,
and staff, question for you. This Valance logo stuff, does the whole awning count as one sign? So you could do logo on top and the Valance, or is it one or the other?
It's one or the other.
Okay, understood.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to see the streetscape and, you know,
In context.
really how high is it going to be off
I
the
also want
ground?
to take into consideration the awnings we have upstairs as
Yeah,
well. I mean, it's
yeah.
a shorter building, so I don't want to get like where it's so,
But what I was getting to was that, you know, it may shallow up the pitch of that awning a good bit, which means
Oh,
you
yeah.
wouldn't see a sign on top, but you would
Yeah, I
see
think-
it on that
Right.
I
balance.
think we would be leaning towards.
That
signage
edge
on
treatment.
the edge
Yeah,
treatment.
Yeah.
and I
Which
think
I-
it worked better, especially if we decided to
Like that.
approve.
Yeah.
If we approve something like this below that trim band,
Mm-hmm.
then it would have to shallow up probably enough that you can't see the top anyways.
Yeah, I think that's the
and
way
then
we would like it.
codes, there's a zoning ordinance that this awning has to be X amount of feet off the ground, like
8,
head height.
did you
It's
say?
8. Is that,
Yeah.
so that's the bottom of the valance? Yeah, so,
I think somebody also asked the question about the outdoor seating space. It's 6 feet from the edge of the building to that, where that fence is proposed.
Where that really went.
Okay.
Which is now the outside of our, planters that are there now, so I don't
Okay.
know if that's.
So then my question would be, well, before I go there, I'm not totally opposed to it being underneath and different from the other buildings, but still, I think the signage would get lost if it wasn't on the front of the awning. The next thing, if it's 6 feet, I'd be really curious. There's certain depths the bar has to be. I think, like, at the very least, like, unless they're just setting drinks there. I mean, I've seen some that are 6, 8 inches for just setting drinks.
That's all
Right.
this would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'd like to, I think I would include that
Okay.
dimension, all the dimensions.
so there's no requirement on that, though?
I don't,
no,
Is
it's
there?
up,
Do
it's
we
up to
have
you.
Anything? Okay.
I think it's up to you. I think
Awesome.
yeah, and I think Mary hit it on the head. If you can thin this thing up, we still want the front of your building to be the star of the show.
Right.
But just like everybody's downtown street front, I mean, it's important that maintain consistency and rhythm. And if we get something dense enough or tall enough or both, it can all of a sudden feel like the mass of the building is jumping out. That's what we want to avoid. It's that
Right.
mass and visual of that overpowering
Yeah.
what you have going on, which is very nice. So, okay, anything else we talked about? Let me look below the cornice. The length of the awning, let's talk about that just a little bit more. I think they're recommending taking it all the way across. The whole front would be most typical. What's weird about yours is you do have these upstairs awnings, which they're all partials.
Right.
So it's like, you know.
And a separate business on the right side.
Yeah, yeah. And not to say you can't cover their awning, and I think what I said is they would be allowed to put their signage
And
on it too as a separate sign. Is that true?
That makes me crazy.
That's not true.
Well,
That's what you just said.
that's my business upstairs too, so we won't do that.
Okay, okay. A separate tenant doesn't get any signage downstairs?
Well, they
Just
can
their
have it
door?
on the wall.
or the door.
They've already
The
got a
door.
hanging sign.
I got a hanging
Yeah.
sign.
Right here. It
We're
honestly
good.
belongs
I understand
to
what's
the
there.
guy.
I thought I heard staff say, yes, they would be able to put signage on that, and that is not the case.
They could relocate, I mean, if they wanted to, they could split we don't review what signage goes on the awning.
As long as it's 60%. Okay, you could say Merry Christmas on it if you wanted. Okay. That's, I was like, I thought you just said they could put it on there. Yeah, not to say you would, I just.
So you
okay.
think it's best to extend the awning all the way across as opposed to, that's what I'm hearing, as opposed to
The space
this-
where
the
you're
space
sitting.
where it's, applicable to stable reserve and outdoor seating only?
I don't know. To me, it has to do with this fence too, and how much of that is enclosed. At least you'd then have a demarcation point for like, well, it stops over something like some marker on the ground. But I know that most of the other ones in downtown are just full width of some variety, some symmetrical kind of. Like I said, there's pilasters. Yours is more of a wooden first floor, whereas some people have brick and things like that.
And again, if you keep the door signage, I don't think there would be any confusion.
Yeah.
I kind of wouldn't hate to know how deep McCreary, who's on the right side of you?
On the right side's Walton's Jewelry.
No, is it Walton's that's on the right side of?
Walton is on our right side, looking at our
Okay,
building.
I wouldn't hate to know what their awning depths are too.
Yeah, they've
Theirs
got
pretty
a,
shallow.
theirs has a shallow metal
Yeah.
one, if I recall.
Okay, so yours would come out further than theirs?
Yeah, if we're
Yeah.
having seating, for
Okay.
sure.
It's different
It's gonna be
purposes.
definitely
Yeah, we gotta
a
see.
different,
I'd
like
be
it's
able to-
going to separate a little bit, for sure.
Gotta seat people out
In
there.
that case, I kind of almost would like it to be just over the seating area.
Yeah, and if it is only partial, I think that tells you that it almost definitely has to be below that trim band.
Yeah,
You imagine
that
it being
too.
above the trim
Yeah.
band and only half.
Yeah,
You'd be
I
like,
agree with
yeah.
that.
where's
That's a good
kind of
point.
weird
Yeah.
trim thing is poking out of the top?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is interesting, and we haven't looked at a lot of these, so it's an interesting discussion.
And just to go back, I don't think the intent of signage on Main Street, I just want to get this straight. I don't think you can put anything you want on there. I think it is for businesses. I don't think you could put up awnings that just said whatever, a message.
Right.
I can't imagine, and I would like that clarified now that it's been brought up.
You don't have to worry about that with
I
us.
know you won't. I'm
Yeah.
not worried for you, and I personally think your business looks amazing, and I'm
Yeah.
Wait, I'm
confident.
curious if we could move what's on the window, so we've got like coffee, cocktails, gifts. Like, could that go across the awning?
Instead
And
of.
leave stable
and
reserve
leave
and the
stable
gold
reserve
letters
at
on the building.
Top.
I think as long as it's 60%, but I don't know. That's kind of one of
Well-
those.
Also, if their awning is coming out further than the others,
I don't think
I'm
it would
just-
come out further than McCreary's because
Okay.
we're set
We've
back
kind
from
of,
McCreary's.
yeah, we're back
Yeah.
further.
They-
oh, okay.
In fact, I know theirs will get, well,
think-
McCreary's will come out probably 2 feet
Further.
further than ours, yeah.
And there's zoning regulations on how deep they are.
Right.
So that's just kind of is what it is, as long as you meet those requirements.
And I would say, look around and see if you see other awnings that advertise what's inside.
Anything other
I
than-
think this downtown Franklin's a team sport, and if everybody did that, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the way it looks on the glass.
I love.
Yeah, the glass
It's
signage
very
is
effective.
nice. and-
Yeah.
I do
Okay.
think it's a little redundant to
Yeah.
have it up top and.
Oh, yeah.
They
I think
can't.
that needs to
Yeah.
shake, for
Yeah,
sure.
one or the other.
One or the other, right.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it just says distillery and then has your horse head each
Or
side
like
or
he
something.
mentioned, has stable reserve at the top and then what's on the glass, on the awning, if
Right.
it'll meet the
And
requirements.
eliminate the window and have that
Right.
on the front. Kind of like an ice cream shop has, ice cream, sandwiches, whatever.
I would
you know.
imagine Killen's Price has that across the street.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I don't remember what they have.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Any other feedback for them? And like I said, staff will help you walk through the either ors and
Yeah,
the
perfect.
Yeah.
if we do this, what cascades from that and shuffle those cards about what you have to give up or give in, depending on the option that you really like. But hopefully that was useful.
Yes.
All right, anything
yeah.
else?
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. All right, item number 3, discussion of principal building alterations at 157 4th Avenue South, the Dan German Building. David Crothamel.
Good evening. Yes, Dave Crothamel with Lee Restoration.
Welcome. Go ahead. Tell us the latest and greatest here.
So we've been in front of you a few times now regarding the railing systems over here, and we're at the last final stage of the railing. We have two issues that we're dealing with. We have the railings in between the arches and the railings going up the stairs. We modified the railings, get through the arches to just have the single rail at the top and took out the balusters and the bottom rail. And we painted that the color of the door trim in hopes that this would be something that we could discuss here tonight, that this is an adequate median, because our client is concerned because the porch is so shallow that the handicap service ramp that's on the side, as people are coming up and coming across, they're just concerned people could fall off the little step up there. I know it's not a code violation, but they are still concerned about that type of issue. So that's the first question that we have. And then the second one, we did have a set of railings going up the stairs, and you guys asked us to take out the balusters and make it a single pole for each section, so one at the top, one at the bottom, and one at the extension. We had the modification done, and then we put the railings up there temporarily and took some pictures, and they're sitting on the side now. Hoping for some back and forth and some advice.
Okay. Let's hear from staff, please.
Thank you. So we'll start with the railing for the steps. It appears to be appropriate for the conditions of the approved COA that we had issued. And then for the railing in between the porch columns, the guidelines still recommend to avoid installing porch railings on porches where railings were not historically present. And I think in some historic images, it looks like there may have been a single bar running through there, but we don't know the age of those and whether that was a historic railing in between it. So,
Okay. Thank you.
okay.
All right. Anybody want to start us off?
Can you reiterate what the concern is? You mentioned wheelchairs. and-
Wheelchairs, people with any type of handicap service, like a cane or something like that. There's a little table up there, just kind of give it a look. You know, you can come up there, sit down, relax. So with the depth of the little kind of porch that we have there, you get very constricted walking past that area. And our concern is that, you know, the passerby we feel like they could come by and have something to guide them, you know, as they're walking, give them stability. And that was their concern.
Okay. Anything else, Madeline?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing that old picture and seeing something. You couldn't tell for sure what it was, but there was some little horizontal. But, you know, at the same time, you know, all these pictures have tables and rocking chairs and all kinds of things. So if they're really concerned about people getting through, get all that stuff off the porch. Did you have anything, Mary?
We're trying to dress it up and give it a little bit of, you know,
Yeah, but-
inviting, welcoming to the visitors that are going to be coming to, you know, see it or use it. It's, and we did get approval on the last historic zoning meeting to have the upper railing, which matches the railing that we're proposing in between the arches. So the section of the rail that was approved across the top above the arches, that is the same rail that we'd be using in between the arches as well. So it is in configuration with what was approved for the system on the top.
Okay. Trying to remember what that was now.
I vaguely remember
It's just
it.
a little balustrade on top of the roof.
Yeah,
Okay.
a couple of posts and then balusters in between.
Okay.
To me, it's minimal,
It's what?
very minimal, what they're wanting. Do I think it really helps the look of the building? I don't, but it's minimal.
I kind of wish it was more minimal.
Yeah,
I
like-
agree.
Like one of those
Yeah,
pieces of
even more
iron.
Minimal would
If it
I
were-
wish it was a little more minimal. I understand the purpose of it.
Yeah,
I don't love it for the building either.
right.
I think the iron rail that you've shown here has that lamb's tongue profile. If it were just that between there, and it's only an inch thick or inch and a quarter thick instead of a 2x4, then
Yeah,
probably
that's-
another 2x4.
It's a
Under it.
2x4 with a 2x6 on top.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, so
Now,
it's
Yeah, the scale of
Slim
that.
that's 5
that
inches.
Horizontal piece is
Yeah.
just too much for the vertical of the stone.
And I think the old picture looked kind of chunky and thick like that, but
It did.
we don't know when, how, when that was done, and we can't even see it that well. So if we're saying that, oh, maybe it's just a safety retrofit, well then, as light a hand as you can do.
We've done other railings around, Franklin and the storefronts and things like that, and that's exactly the same railing that we've put in, the 2x4 with the 2x6 on top, beveled in the middle.
On a
It's a
in
pretty standard rail system
in a
the
stone
historic.
porch.
We did it at the Biscuit Love. We did one last year at Biscuit
That's
Love.
wood framed.
It's got a wood frame. Yes. Yeah, it
yeah.
doesn't have stone arches. in
That's what I'm
between.
saying.
Okay,
Masonry and
it's a
cast
bigger
iron go
building.
together. Wood and stone.
fair
Yeah.
enough.
Not as
Architectural
common.
differences.
Yeah.
But just minimizing it. Almost the same comment that we had for all the pickets that were on the rails. That's so much more minimal than what we saw before.
Sure.
But that's the point, is we're trying to showcase the historic building, and this building's got a very unique history, and been muddled with in its own right over the years. But to just let it, anything that we have to do modern appurtenances to it, even that ramp, as minimal as we can get away with, just lets the house be the star of the show, and that's kind of the goal. And I think that 5-inch thick wood specifically in the masonry openings, just would be more minimized with just the simple same profile you use for your top cap of your rail there.
Okay.
Anchor at both sides, and then it's very, very hard to even see.
Yeah.
Great. What do you think about the ones on the stairs? Are those
I think
something you would?
It's better.
Yeah. It's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Jared, did you have something? Jared comes up, we all perk up.
We know each other.
I was going to mention that we will have an inspection on this to verify code compliance. We won't have to go through a plan review, but that those handrails do need to go all the way up to that top landing. So if they are not currently, it needs to go all the way up, because that's the stairway. Each step is going up, and so that's included as a step.
But there's no code for the railings. They're not necessary because of the height. That was just for aesthetics and for, personal.
Stairways require handrails.
Okay, okay.
So guardrails are slightly different.
Okay.
Requirements. So their guardrails are the 30-inch requirements that you're thinking of there. But we can.
So you just need a handrail on the stairway? You don't need any balusters?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And that's
Gotcha.
why they lightened it up on that last review.
Right.
That we took all the balusters out and all that. So-
Yeah. But I think
Fair
that,
enough.
I don't know that your top vertical necessarily has to move, but your handrail has to extend beyond the
It does,
nose.
and has to return as well.
It has to return.
Turn into the stone.
So you
Yeah, in that case, it would be the stone.
see that lamb's tongue on the bottom closes the loop and touches the vertical at the bottom. they would do something similar at the top. So you may have to move them.
They're gonna, it's gonna
In.
constrict the size of the stair.
But it's
system in
it's pretty wide.
It is.
It's not gonna
Yeah.
all of a sudden keep people from getting in there. But yeah, work with codes on that, and they'll get you taken care of. But this, from our perspective, much lighter, and even the profiles with the lamb's tongue and that cap is all appropriate for this era and style of house, the masonry, all that. So, anything else? Anybody?
No.
Thank you.
Guys, good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
it.
Item number 4, discussion of alterations to previously approved COA on a principal building at 1309 Adams Street. Mr. McCreary. Do you ever get confused on who goes first, them or you?
Just let whoever wants to talk first, go ahead.
I always get confused because the voting meeting's backwards. So, all right, go ahead, Mr. McCreary.
All right, so this one, let me get the different drawing up. So this is a project you've seen before and approved, and what is different this time, and maybe you'll be happy about it, is we have eliminated the dormer on the upper floor in the hopes of instead putting a full or not a full basement, but a partial basement below the house. So the exterior kind of reverts more back to the, I guess, original typology and more historic typology of the house without the dormer. The only elements of the basement that would be visible would be potentially kind of the very top edge of any window wells, as well as the one cellar door that is back on kind of the back part of the left side. So you can kind of see in these images, it's about 20 inches tall. It extends out around 6 feet from the side of the house. We could definitely plan to plant things around that. So from the front of the street, it's not visible, but it is there. But it is historically accurate. I mean, there are plenty of homes around the area that have cellar doors like that kind of sloped piece. And then, of course, the window wells, like we said, they will be at ground plane. So from the street, no real noticeable element there.
Do you have, is there any plan for fencing or anything that might mask some of that too?
There's no requirement, well, we don't have a requirement or intention to put a fence up around the property at this point.
Okay,
So-
just asking.
Yep.
Okay, let's hear from staff then.
Thank you. So the only changes at this time proposed are the 4 window wells and 1 cellar door, on 2 on each side. The window and window wells appear to have minimal visibility and do not appear to detract from the building. Additional information about the specifications of the cellar doors will be needed, such as finish and materials, to ensure that the door blends with the building. And the only guideline that it appears to be meeting is to avoid adding new windows to the front facade or readily visible facades, because they won't be as readily visible at the window well level.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now, Mr. McCreary, this cellar door, you have interior stair access to.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, anybody want to give feedback on that?
I'm trying to, so across the back, you'll see a full door. Is that right?
If you look, can you pull up that one that was on the left, kind of a 3D view?
I'm trying to,
I'm sorry, top right.
It's right here.
So in the top right image right there, you can kind of see back where the arrow is. That's the cellar door that you would
Okay.
see from
like a double
the
door
street.
storm
Oh,
shelter
and
kind
One
of
of those
thing.
low slope
Yeah.
things, yeah.
I think it's a good solution.
But the last page shows the interior entrance, right, on that?
That's the one I was
Section.
getting confused. I see it.
That,
now.
that was the
one more
question. It
down.
has
I
an
do not have
interior
a
stair.
section cut through that stair for the cellar door, but it would be
This one
going
here?
down. That's a section from the main house
interior
stair.
stair.
But essentially, it's roughly the same. The stair will be within that footprint of the cellar door.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Well, I guess to my question was, do you have to have a cellar door if you have an interior stair?
Right.
What's the rationale there that you need to add mass to the site and outside? I know it's not much mass, but it's something.
The alternative would be to have just kind of an areaway with a stair, with a.
Is it for
door.
egress?
It is for egress.
Okay. So it's your second means of egress, and the window wells will not do that for you?
They potentially could, but, you know, the bigger we have to make them, the bigger they are. We just liked the idea of a, you know, stair means of egress to be able to get out.
Okay. Understood.
There are cellar doors in the historic
Yeah,
district.
yeah.
I know the one
Yeah.
that we worked on in Columbia
Right.
had that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't have a problem with it. I just thought if it's redundant and it's just a thing because we think they're neat to look at, then don't do it. But
Right.
you know, there's lots of ways to meet egress. The windows, that 5 square feet thing, and then you got to get from underground out. So there's a ladder thing, and you've done them, and I've had to do them, and
Right.
But yeah, these things are not the most waterproof things in the world.
No.
So
And they're-
I'm like,
they're-
you sure you want that? There's ways you can do it,
Yeah.
but I was like, all the ones I've ever seen that are historic leak like a sieve, and it makes me think of the movie Twister, and I'm thinking, man, is this really what you want to do?
Right.
Maybe they make them better.
They do.
Yeah,
They make
surely.
better ones that have like a curb and everything now.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
one that you and I messed with was,
Not that.
it was hard. It was
Yeah.
tough.
Very much so.
The windows over that cellar door, are they fixed?
No, they are double hung.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then as far as color goes, I may need to be educated on this, but is there any guidelines regarding the color of what the cellar door is supposed to be, whether it's supposed to match the house or?
It's usually all like, I mean, historically they were all made out of trim. It was wood, and so it was
Right.
painted like the trim of your house, but the doors almost look like a gate, and they may have been whatever your accent trim was, green or red, or
Yeah.
they may
Maybe-
sometimes were
maybe
all
go
white.
away green. I don't know.
Well,
You know,
that's
we've
what
got
I
lots
was
of color
wondering.
choices,
That's
so-
kind of what
Yeah.
I was thinking.
We'll
I'm
pick
like, why
something
wouldn't
that's
you
neutral.
match it to the grass so it
Yeah.
kind of takes away from the mass of the house?
Yeah, some of them are very decorative.
Yeah, this
I-
is not intended to be a focal point. We will not be
No.
celebrating the,
I
Cellar
would
door.
be personally looking for metal.
it will be metal.
Yeah. Well, if you bring, are you all going to make this, or is this something you're
No,
buying?
we're thinking of Bilco.
Okay.
Cellar door, that's the
So-
manufacturer.
so- bring the spec in
Okay.
the picture just so we go,
Sure.
it's this thing, this is what the handle looks like. If it's Bilco, it's big, thick, looks like big, thick pieces of metal. If you've been to commercial buildings, it has that hatch on the roof that opens. That's a
Yeah.
Bilco hatch.
Okay.
That's who makes that
Gotcha.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, this one is more residentially scaled. It doesn't have the huge, it's not going to be a commercial looking cellar door.
Okay.
It will look historically appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not hearing bad feedback for
No, and
that.
I think this
I
is a
think
good
it's-
solution
I
to
do too.
what you were trying to do.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Window
Good job.
wells. Any comments on window wells?
No, I mean, I think they're going to be barely visible. I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to be an issue.
Just mow your
You've
grass a
offered to
little higher.
landscape too, so
Yeah.
I think it'd be acceptable.
And I guess the big change is that dormer's gone.
Yeah, I think that will please some particular members of the commission.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It makes a big difference.
this is a good solution.
It
It does a
really is an
lot.
elegant
It
solution.
lets the form of the house
Yeah.
show to me
This is
of what
nice.
was there.
Good. Okay, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Same guy.
That's right, I'm back.
Item number 5, discussion of site alterations on a principal building and new construction and accessory at 1010 Fair Street.
Perfect. You have seen this project before. We have just made some minor modifications based on previous feedback. Some of that mainly includes the size of the dormer off the second floor, size of the windows and things like that to make it more consistent with the other window on the building and kind of keep it in the right scale with the building itself. We also did some measurements of the adjacent, so the property next door has a garage kind of in the back near this one. It is about 12 to 15 feet forward of where we're putting the garage on this one. Where we've placed the garage here is really, it's at the end of the existing drive for this property anyway. So we're not, it's kind of going where the drive ended now. The property next door, the building is about 18 feet tall. We're around close to 20, so fairly close in that range. Their gable is turned the other direction, so they have a kind of a cross gable where we have a forward-facing gable on ours. And that building is probably, I think it's right around 36 to 40 feet deep, the other one, the adjacent property. And then I'm trying to remember, ours is right around, yeah, same depth, more or less. So,
Okay. Let's hear from staff, please.
The property located at 1010 Fair Street is located within the Hinchyville National Register Historic District and is considered a contributing circa 1920 1.5-story bungalow. The site alterations include adding more hardscape, a rear fence, and a wood deck on the rear of the principal building, and they all appear to align with the guidelines. Although more information is needed on the fence, such as the design, to confirm if it aligns with the guidelines. The new accessory structure is appropriately placed, subordinate in height, and appears to be an appropriate size per the zoning ordinance, but measurements will need to be included within the COA application. It does appear to be complementary to the architectural style of the principal building and aligns with the guidelines recommendations. The garage door with the window light pattern at the top of the door appears appropriate for the architectural style of the house and would be recommended over the carriage style door. The guidelines do recommend not utilizing chimneys on accessory structures, so the proposed chimney does not align with the guidelines. However, the chimney is placed so that it would not be highly visible from the street. There were several project considerations left on the review, and they will be provided to the applicant with the recap. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any feedback, anybody? Is there, so, I was making kind of a mental picture in my head here as you described. You're further back than the neighbor, but you're 2 feet taller. They are not gable fronted, so they have receding height, and yours is all 20 feet right up front. Is there a reason you're doing one or the other in terms of the orientation of the gable?
we were kind of just making it square up with the house. So the house has got a cross gable. We just wanted to kind of pull it back and have a similar form, but not be matchy-matchy.
To me, it was all kind of tied together with this chimney discussion and some other roofline things, because you've got a nice looking shed dormer thing that you've got going on. If the gable were turned similar to the neighbor, we wouldn't see any chimney, and that might make us consider it differently. Might not. I mean, the guidelines just say accessory structures don't have it, but it's also an open porch. It's not really enclosed building.
Right.
So there's some nuance on this one that's a little different, but right now we can't, according to the drawing, say the chimney cannot be seen. If it were cross gabled, we could say you definitely can't see the chimney. There's no doubt about it. So just like I said, I was drawing that mental picture in my head, and I'm like, it may just not be what the client wants, and that's okay, but it's going to be a harder sell on the chimney at that point because we can see some of it. I don't know that you'll actually see some of it. You can see it in 2D.
Right. I mean,
So-
that is the
But that's what we go by, right?
challenge
We
of
don't
2D
know.
drawings.
We don't know.
I
But-
will make sure to bring a 3D rendering of that.
yeah,
to
if
the
you, I mean,
next
this is all in 3D
rendering.
already. Just
Yeah, I'll just
bring
have
it.
another one that's got it, yeah.
Yeah. Any feedback that anybody else has? I mean, like I said, I was just trying to get this picture in my head of how this thing was shaped and placed.
I have a couple questions. So, do you have a drawing that or a plan that shows how this addition relates to the main structure?
Yes. As far as
Um,
site
Thinking
plan?
about the gable.
Sorry, say that again.
I'm thinking about the gable.
The main building it is a gable with kind of a broken shed on the front of it. So really it's got like a primary gable, and then the front just kind of sheds off.
So with the new proposed shed roof, be, or dormer, I'm sorry, dormer, be hidden behind the main structure? That's what I would
Probably
like
for
to
the-
see.
From straight on, probably would be. You can kind of see in the site plan on in that image, it might be slightly visible on the side of it, really, because part of the garage is behind there, but as it's kind of sloping up, it'll peek out, but,
I think I would understand that more if I knew how it attaches to the main structure.
how the gable attaches?
No.
Or how the shed dormer attaches?
No, how the new addition attaches to the principal building.
There's no addition to the existing house, right? It's
Correct.
all accessory,
This
but
is- oh, this is
there's a
like-
screen porch
I see.
thing
It's-
on the
it's
back
like
of the
a neighbor.
garage.
Okay.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there is the addition of the deck on the back, which I think is just a rework
It's
of an
just- yeah.
existing deck.
Gotcha.
But yes, just for clarity's sake there.
And then on the last page, I see the two garage doors, the one in the elevation and then the 3D image.
Mhm.
Do you know what style you're going with yet?
What's shown in the 2D image is really the design we're going for. The 3D is just kind of a
that
artifact
makes
from the
sense.
family we used in the drawing program.
I think that was staff's recommendation too, was that upper left one was more appropriate for the
Yes,
style of the
and
house.
that would be
Okay.
the intent.
What about the door to the back, like off the back?
Also with the 2D would be
Okay.
the intent.
And then are you doing the stone as rendered or?
Not exactly, no. We have not selected the stone yet. This is just kind of a standard ashlar pattern.
Okay.
I would imagine it would be, probably need to talk to the owner a little bit more about that, whether it's a dry stack or not, but I imagine it's probably not. It's probably going to be more of just a typical kind of field stone stack type of thing. I'll look at the main house has a little
Brick.
bit of stone, so we would,
Well,
Try to
but
be
there's
consistent with
also
that.
a little chimney stack that shows brick on the front,
And the,
a red brick.
Mr.
oh,
Chair,
from the main
Oh,
house.
Yeah, the main house. Mary, do you have something real
the
quick?
chimney's gonna be all the way to the back.
Yeah, I think
It'll be 40 feet behind the front of the garage.
Right.
yeah, in like I said, in 2D we see it. I'm not sure it's visible at all, but
either.
my point was if that gable turned, definitely not visible. But that may
Sure.
not be what the owners
Sure.
want, which is fine. And you said there's just storage upstairs,
Yeah, we'll have an access, but it's not going to be tall enough to actually.
so there's no stair, like permanent stair, just to pull down. Okay, interesting. Yeah, the chimney, like I said, is nuanced by the fact that it's the screen porch and it's way, way, way back. I think when we have told people no to chimneys, they have had fireplaces in like a guest house. And I think that was kind of the intent of the guidelines from what I remember
I-
when they were being written. So this is definitely different from that.
There are some precedent. There's one on Fair that has a chimney on the side of the garage structure that was recently, I think within the last year or two, I think maybe 3 years approved
Okay.
through the board. So there is some precedent, yeah, modern precedent. Did I say Fair? I meant Second Avenue, sorry. Second Avenue.
Do we, staff, that we just had the, what other site elements were there again? Remind me. The
It
deck.
was the rear deck, the rear fence, and the addition of some more hardscape,
Okay.
but all appeared to meet the guidelines. We just needed some clarifications on how much,
All the square footage calcs.
right, just for
Okay,
our zoning
okay.
team.
This is really, because I don't think you're going to see it, nothing to do with anything, but the way you've got the retractable screens in that door makes
The-
me go, are you sure you,
The way it's drawn.
yeah, it's just not traditional looking.
Yeah,
But I
we
don't
will-
think you're going to see it, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it comes down to how they detail it too.
Yeah, and really, anytime we're drawing something, the 2Ds are kind of really what we intend for the detailing. And the 3Ds are really more of just a massing and kind of general context.
If you zoom in on the 2D upper right-hand corner, there's actual like column capitals and base and things like that.
And rafter tails. And
Yeah,
things like
make
that.
it. Make it look a little more like the house. So, okay. Anything else for Mr. McCreary?
No.
Mary, anything? Feel good? All right. Thank you very
Great,
much.
Thank you.
All right. What time is it? Okay. Item number 6, discussion of sign alterations at 214 East Main Street. Katie Britt, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
If you'll give us an overview of your project here, and then we'll hear from staff and we'll discuss.
Absolutely. So I'm Katie Britt. I own Sweet Haven. We're on Main Street. I brought Mark. He's doing our signage at our other locations, and he would be doing the changes to this sign. So this sign was grandfathered in from Baskin-Robbins. Huge blessing. We love having it, but it has become an eyesore. We sort of rushed into it as we were getting open and knew that we had this opportunity. I think we were working with Rose back in the day, and we just kind of like threw our logo on it without a lot of thought. And now as we become more immersed in the Main Street community, it's just such a special place, and we really want it to become almost like that Graze sign that's like iconic to the area. And this is not that. So we're trying to make some revisions to really make it pretty. And when I tell you that we care about aesthetics, it is like one of our top things in our brand. And customers all of the time are like, can you please fix that ugly sign? I mean, only the cone lights up a really ugly, like warm yellow color. The rest of it, we don't have lit up because we just refaced the Baskin-Robbins sign. So if we were to light up that bigger portion, you would see their logo still come through it. So I guess we want to talk about our plans, what we're allowed to do, and then also, are we allowed to remove that Baskin-Robbins sign without losing that grandfathered? Because I think my loose understanding is that we could reface everything, but we could not like tear it down and start from scratch, but I might be wrong with the signage. So we just want some clarification, what we're allowed to do, and we want to make it pretty for Main Street. So we want it to be, something that people like, and it's at the beginning of Main Street, so I feel like it just really sets the stage for, what you're about to experience, and it's just really ugly right now.
So tell
So I
us,
apologize to everyone.
tell us about these drawings we see and
Yeah, yes.
what this is and how it's built.
So, yes, so this would be an acrylic backing, and then we have the letters currently almost like a 3D. It comes out from the sign, and they would be illuminated. I don't think that's within the realm of possibility. We just were discussing, could we make it, them a little smaller so they're just slightly raised? Is there any realm of possibility to making it kind of come out? I think that would just add an aesthetic piece to it. Yes.
Hello. I own Mid-South Sign Collective. So the sign right now that's in there, it's probably a 3/16 acrylic with the digital print on there. So we just want to know the options. One option would be we'd use like an 080 aluminum, and what we do is we would weld a channel letter to it. So the back would not light up, but the illumination would come through the letters. So we could use the illumination from the existing sign. We wouldn't have to put it inside the letters, and we could just leave the face off or the back off of the letters. That would be an option, but I believe we were under the impression that these acrylic signs had to stay in even if we put new signs. Can we take those out and she can store them on location? Because it would just diffuse the light anyways. Then you're double stacking.
Okay.
Another option we could do, if we couldn't do the channel letters, and when I say like the 3D would be your typical channels, but I can make them 2 inches deep or maybe even 3 inches deep. They'd be shallow. We could also do an aluminum, and we could just route out the face just with a water jet, and then I could back acrylic on the inside of the on the back side of the aluminum, and then we could just slide it in just like what's existing right now as well.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear from staff on their recommendation on how the guidelines read, and then we'll discuss it some here.
Thank you. So just to clarify, this is a legally non-conforming sign since the sign structure is remaining. So you can remove the panels as long as you put another panel in and it's not changing the overall sign structure in which the panel is in. So I believe you can remove the Baskin Robbins if it doesn't change the structure. And it can stay illuminated as it has been illuminated and has the ability to be turned on. So this is not a sign type within our guidelines or the zoning ordinance, and would be considered a reface. And so we're primarily looking for feedback about the colors, material, and the design, especially the dimensionality of the letters, as it's not commonly seen. Feedback about the lightness of the background color proposed, as it is lighter, a lighter color, but is darker than the white lettering, and proposed raised lettering, which is not commonly seen, to make sure that the sign remains respectful in response to the character and the property of the downtown district. So just to clarify, as long as the proposed sign structure does not change, they can reface it. I don't believe the use of acrylic is seen or recommended for any other signs downtown, so commonly we would recommend metal or wood.
Okay. Yeah, this is unique that it has acrylic now. It's like that's the whole point of the light up sign is it's acrylic.
Yeah.
Okay. Any thoughts, anybody?
Just to say something, when I can't really visualize what the raised letters lit up are gonna look like. So I think if that's what you're gonna go forward with asking to do, find a sign that has that, so you can I just don't understand. I think I understand when you say, well, we'll just cut out the letters and light it from the back. So I will take the position that if this is grandfathered in, then you have to do what's there. Changing letters that stick out and all of that, to me, is more profound than just internally lit flat letters. That's what I would hope.
Okay.
What I would really hope, but I don't even know, that may keep you from being grandfathered in. If this could come down about 3 feet, that would throw me to death, but
It's up there.
it's up there.
It's way up there.
That's why we haven't even been able to clean it. It's like, it requires a lot of equipment to get up to it, so.
Yeah.
So to ask one question, so the use of acrylic is, you could not use acrylic. It would have to have.
Well, I think it has acrylic now.
It has
It's just
acrylic, but
our existing guidelines don't have acrylic as approved because we don't allow any
But
internally
you're-
lit signs.
Okay,
But
so-
you're grandfathered in
Yeah.
with acrylic. Now, all that to say, your description of an aluminum sign that has maybe been water jet cut and then has acrylic behind it, so just the letters glow and the rest doesn't, could be interesting. It would be the same, I guess, Sweet Haven would be the only part that lights up in all the, I think this looks purple, but I don't think your color's actually this lavender.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a blush.
But what's lavender on here would not light up at that point. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
And what you described before about the 3D letters, and I think we've had some proposals at the factory and other places where they're actual 3D letters that are individually backlit. I think that's pretty strictly been prohibited from our guidelines for many years, and we've rejected a lot of those. But the description you had of, I agree with Mary that any 3D kind of embossing of any sort is probably, increasing that nonconformity, which is all that legal blah, blah, blah that we hear.
what if we did, like, if I cut it, the typical width is probably about 4 inches. If I cut it to 2 and possibly, it's called a return on the side, the aluminum, and I painted that the same color as the background, so it'd be much more subtle, and then you would just see the white.
I'd have to see it because I'm not following you exactly how it works. I think that's what we're struggling with is like, what is it?
I won't have to see it.
Okay.
I'm taking the position that if this is non-conforming, grandfathered in, then this is the sign, non-conforming, grandfathered in. Putting metal letters on it, doing all of that is just going to violate
Take it in a new
the-
direction.
the luxury you have of this grandfathered in sign. So
Right.
I would want to see it come back, this with your, with your lettering, and I think, I love your aesthetic. And I think you've got a lot of opportunity to let that work for you with what you've got. So that's how that's gonna be
Yeah,
my voice.
yeah.
So if we take it and not, and just keep it flush, we can
Yes.
still do the letter cutout because it's still on the acrylic.
No, I would not be, I think the letters cut out is going to be more eye-catching, more whatever, flashy, non-conforming than what you have right now.
I think what they're describing is it would be
I know
just
what-
two pieces of glass behind each other, and one of them doesn't let light through and one does, but nothing 3D.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing
Right.
3D,
Yeah.
just flush.
Okay.
Yeah, because the problem too is the height, like you
Uh-huh.
mentioned, when you have the gooseneck lighting, like
Yeah.
that is permissible. When it storms, that sign, I'm always like, oh Jesus, do not let that, I mean, I always never want anything above that sign because
Right.
it's, to me, a risk to pedestrian, to anybody, like
Yeah.
having something attached to the top of it. So I would rather have it lit from the inside
Oh,
than
yeah, I'm
above, you know
saying
what I mean?
lit from the inside
Yes.
when I'm saying.
That's what,
Okay.
yes,
So,
yes.
yeah, if we just had it flush with cutout and that's what was lit,
I would be willing to look at that, but it's
Need to
always
see
just been internally,
It'd still be internally
it would
lit.
still be internally
I
lit,
know
yes.
that.
Yes, yes, it would just be the
the
letters. would be-
change.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
changing the way,
And really,
Yeah.
yeah, what I'd say too, though, is
maybe it's
when you,
softer.
well, when you decide to do that, all this part that's lavender here, if that's not lit up, you're giving up a whole lot of light, and visibility.
I think.
So, and if you lined up all the shop owners on Main Street, how many would kill
I know.
to have
Oh, it
this?
is such a blessing.
It is
We know the
yeah.
blessing that exists, yes,
And-
yes.
You could have an auction.
Yes.
And,
I'm going to try to
Yes.
say my point
Yes.
better.
yeah.
Okay, this came along in whenever Baskin Robbins came, probably, I don't
1950,
know.
yes, yes.
1980.
Yes,
It's a 1980 sign.
Yeah.
It is believable clutter. That's what I would say.
It's believable what?
Clutter.
Oh.
yes, right now,
Yeah,
yes.
Right now.
Yes.
It is.
I agree.
A believable clutter that's been there. So I think keeping it true to itself
Yeah.
has its,
Yeah,
I am
the
too.
simplest thing is
And
just
you're gonna
replace
have
it
more
with your
light.
panels and take Baskin Robbins out of the back
Yeah,
so that you could
that's-
turn it on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's totally,
right.
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
You could just replace what's there with what you're proposed.
Totally, yes.
Just
Right.
flat printed on acrylic and light it up and
Yeah, I
There
think
you
that's what
go.
we do.
roll
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, no 3D, just the new,
yeah.
new
Yeah.
'Cause-
vinyl that is fresh and
Yeah,
pretty.
because
And
to do
like-
the
and
lavender
the whole
blackout
thing- the
just
whole
loses
thing,
some
not
impact.
just the letters, right? The whole thing would
Yeah,
be
the
lit?
whole thing lit up.
Yeah.
If it were
The
mine,
whole
I'd be like,
thing-
light
The
it
whole
all.
thing will be lit up.
Yes.
Which has its.
Totally. That's the game changer, is that we can take that piece
Yeah.
out.
Oh, yeah.
That's what- okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think
Acrylic, yeah, I
our,
think so.
Easy enough.
the
Plain acrylic.
grandfathering in, which
Yes.
I was so against, I'll just say, I wanted everything to have a sundown on it in the whole town. But because we had at one point a big barrel can leaning sideways out by the interstate.
Yeah.
But I think the intent was grandfathered in.
Yes.
The signs that are there, changing the face and grandfathering them in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's the most straightforward thing is
Yeah.
print your logos and layouts on new acrylic and
Yeah.
Yeah, good to
Light it
go.
up.
fix your lights.
Yes.
And, what I'd say is that light source that's inside, is going to change the color
Yeah.
between day and night. So that's,
Yeah,
there's your
yeah.
expert.
And be a little
That's what I
beam
always say.
of lavender.
Do you want your color to show during the day or the night? It's going to
Yeah.
be one or the other.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's right.
So, okay.
Just
Yes,
for
ma'am.
purposes, staff administratively reviews refaces. So if they removed the dimensionality and did a flat panel and it was acrylic, would you all feel comfortable with it being administratively
If
reviewed?
it's something that in
Absolutely.
our guidelines says you can, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to come back to see us if it's
No.
that simple. You just,
Yeah, it'll be that
they would
simple,
take, they would take care. You still need a permit to do it, but they would do it.
No, I think I like the bull white.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
if it has white in it, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I think your orange sorbet and vanilla yogurt.
I should have brought you some, I should have.
We can't take bribes
Yes.
unless you bring enough for
Yeah.
everybody at the meeting.
Thank you. Okay,
All
well,
right.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right.
Have a great night.
All right, I think we're going to do one more and then take a short break for about 15 minutes and then come back. Is that fair? Everybody on board with that? That would take us to probably close to 6. So this is item number 7, discussion of partial demolition and addition on a principal structure and new construction accessory structures at 109 Everbright Avenue. Mr. Paxton,
Yeah, good evening.
good evening. If you want to give us, is there anything new here that we haven't seen before?
Since the last DRC, yes.
Okay.
We've
Run
made
us through
adjustments.
what's changed, and then we'll hear from staff.
Definitely. So, thank you. Good evening. The changes since the last DRC include adjustments to the coverings that were previously noted under the kind of staff recommendations for square footage, and so we've shown those as pergolas. That's both the, yeah, you can see this greatly, thank you, in the roof plan. So off the master bedroom addition, in between the two current addition and proposed addition sections, and then at the detached structure. That's the garage structure. So those have been shown as pergolas to, accommodate for the no roof structure so that we're not counting towards the total square footage. The last DRC recommended some adjustments to the corner window on the front facade. And so we've shifted the floor plan and adjusted to reflect that kind of mid-century modern turning of the corner window. We were able to kind of reconfigure the kitchen plan accordingly so that we get that nice turn there without demolishing some of the nice character at the front. Yep. We were able to kind of reorganize. We also adjusted the garage materials. I think previously we had shown them as brick, and in this version we're showing them as lap siding or horizontal siding, which matches some of the character from the front facade of the main house, and then kind of bringing that character back to the accessory structure so that I think conforms to the guidelines. And then, showed more character for the exterior materials in general. I think there's a materials diagram that just kind of started to note some of those items. Yeah, just showing siding, colors of the roofing, the kind of gutter profile, the windows and those horizontal mullions. And then I think there is a section that I have, I think it's at the end of this, that starts to show off the character of that brick reveal that's happening. Really kind of, that's, I think, one of the pieces that's very mid-century to this, and kind of just showing off how we will continue that brick detailing around the proposed addition to this. And then I guess one more thing that I noticed in some of the comments, if you go back just one sheet, I think to the garage, we started showing some additional character at the garage with the garage door and having upper transom lights. You can't quite see it in the 3D, but you can see it in the small photo, kind of coachman style garage door that we like. And I think is complementary to some of the other garage doors you see across that alley. I think that is the kind of adjustment since the last DRC.
Okay, let's hear from staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property located at 109 Everbright Avenue is located within the Everbright Avenue Historic District. The principal building was constructed circa 1955 according to the Williamson County Property Assessor data and is approximately 71 years of age and may be considered historic in age by federal standards. The installation of the skylights on the rear of the building, pool placement, both align with the guidelines. More information is needed on the removal of the shutters on the principal building, but it was previously approved in 2016. The window alterations on the front and left facade are not supported by the guidelines. The proposed pergola is in an appropriate location, but should be a material such as wood or a finished metal to align with the guidelines and not be operable. The minor and larger accessory structure both appear to align with the guidelines, but feedback is requested on the light pattern of the garage door. Information on the proposed rear driveway from the alley is requested for future applications. Then, for the proposal to demolish a portion of the principal building and the construction of a new addition do not align with the guidelines. The proposed addition is 1,270 square feet, and the proposed portion of the building is demolished. The addition would equate to 117.6% of the historic footprint that remains. There are several project considerations left on the review and will be provided to the applicant with the recap. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone want to volunteer to start us off?
I would start by asking staff if do you feel they've met the information needed to approve a demolition?
They have provided a justification for demolition. Based on our review, it doesn't align with the guidelines. It appears to be more maintenance kind of deterioration, such as some siding that has had some water damage that could be replaced, things like that.
Okay.
One of the biggest, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the biggest considerations for demolition to this added structure to the main house over time is it's on a slab as compared to the crawl space for the main home. And it's currently the master bedroom suite to the homeowners, and there's it's almost like an ADA ramp that connects that slab, which maybe at some point it was a garage that connects to their kitchen. And they get a lot of water intrusion into that master bedroom suite. And demolishing this to bring it up to the same floor plan or elevation, to add a crawl space, to like upgrade this to be kind of future-proofing for the next 50 years is our attempt at honoring that character, but then also, maintaining the home there. So this addition piece, the part that we're showing these dilapidated photos of, we're not quite sure when it was added, but it's definitely an addition that was, I don't know when it happened, but it's a slab, it's an old garage, all these pieces and parts that just don't really make it conducive for us to be able to add on in a meaningful way, we feel.
Okay. Anything else?
I'd ask, Mr. Chair, it appears it started life as a carport or a garage. So the materials on the exterior, can you put an age on those?
I don't know. I see T111, but we have outbuildings and primary buildings with T111 on it in town that are over 100-year-old buildings. They've just been refaced. So it's hard to tell. But the idea that this is on a different level and has those, there's a combination of things and just the shape of that piece of the house that tell me that it wasn't originally built as part of the main house. Whether it was attached or not, I don't know for sure, but I can tell you it wasn't intended to be part of main house. Otherwise, it would have been a part of the main
Right.
house.
Yeah, it's on
That's-
slab and with the,
To me, that's the prevailing reason
Right.
to go along with
agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and
demolition.
there's the other, in this block here, this is definitely the outlier age-wise, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, it's still 71 years old, and even if that carport or whatever it was enclosed 2 years later, well, it misses the 70-year mark, even then. So it's really a peculiar little piece, that particular one. I have appreciated all the comments staff gave about like corner windows and those character defining pieces of
Right.
this, I think are
Made a
important.
difference, yeah.
I think my reaction last time was that I felt like because of those factors and what this house is in the district, if it were a house over and flip-flop, they probably wouldn't even have put this in the district when it was made, but it is in the district. That this is just unique, and I was willing to entertain the kind of demolition and this addition. All that to say, I think the feedback we gave last time was that the square footage was just so big. I think there's two important factors to that, and one is that this is a single-story ranch, right? And it's like, well, we would never entertain them putting a second story on this, not in an addition or on the main house, right? So to me, that makes me think, well, maybe we could be flexible on some footprint. And second, it is a big lot. But when I hear things like 117.6%, we've entertained on bigger lots something like 60%
Right.
or 60 something, but 117.6 is above and beyond. And that's after these pergolas have been turned into unenclosed spaces. Is that, or unroofed? They're not roofed.
Change from covered spaces to pergolas.
Pergolas. But so now they don't count the numbers, and we're still at 117.6. So it's just in a, we can't count the previous edition, which is this kind of plan northeast here. It's really just that piece, and I'm not even sure it's fair to include this whatever garage slab thing, even though we think it's old. We don't even know if it's, we can make an argument that it's old or not old, and both of them are just as valid because we don't know. So you can't really include that. I'm not even sure I'd include it if we made you keep it, because we just don't know how old it is, and I don't think it's part of the original mass of the house. So I think, for me, I think I feel comfortable saying, okay, we're somewhere within the guidelines to allow you a little bit of extra because you're a bigger lot and you're a ranch house amongst some pretty good-sized bungalows and other things around you that are a real story and a half, have second floors. But 117.6 is beyond where I would be comfortable. Like I said, we have approved things in the 60% range, I think. And staff might be able to go back and find some of those. I know the houses in my head, but I don't know the addresses. But we've done some of those, but none of those were ranches. But some of them were old single-story houses with tall ceilings, like old Victorians and things that they're just made on big lots. So, I don't know if anybody else has any comment on that, but that's.
I appreciate
Go
you
ahead.
making the comment about it being a very special circumstance and case. And I think one of the biggest pieces for especially our client is being able to make this master primary suite wing feasible. I mean, we could pare back the square footage to maybe make that number 20% less, but we're still going to be higher than the 60%, I think, at the end of the day. And the number that we have been prioritizing to be under is the 30% lot coverage. And we've done a lot of our square footage calculations to make sure that we've not breached past that. And it being a ranch-style home, all we really can do is build horizontal. And so we tried to our best to prioritize the street-facing facade, so none of that is impeded and, doesn't look any larger from the street. And all we've really done is taken their backyard, which is only seen by them.
Yeah.
And
And I think, but what I'd say is the guidelines are really written with the idea that the accessory structure is able to have finished space, and they're pretty generous accessory structure rules here in Franklin. And that is in hopes that it takes a little pressure off of the primary residents that, there's some houses that are just smaller, and we have to judge our feedback and that kind of neighborhood character off of what it is. And so you take a 600 square foot little house, well, it's just never going to be 3,600 square feet.
Sure.
But we do allow, say, for example, if you added on, 60% to this thing, you can take the whole footprint of that house with the addition, and you get half of that again as an accessory. Am I saying that correct?
You get the existing square footage of the principal building, you get half of it for the accessory structure.
That's right.
Yeah, I feel like the number that really is hard is when we chop off the demolition part. We really hurt ourselves, right? And we need that square footage.
Yeah, but even with that, you were probably still at a bunch.
I think we're at maybe 75%.
Yeah, which is still above what we've ever approved. The part that really hurts you is you already have a pretty generous addition on
Right.
the other corner.
Right.
So, I think you're hearing that this project is possible and feasible, but at the primary has to come to a different scale.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's because the same reason I said that if it were flip-flopped, it wouldn't even be in the district. But
I
it,
don't know if I think that.
well, the district ends the next house over.
Yes.
And so if this house were in that spot, if this house would have been 55 years old when that came into play, and it wouldn't have, the district would have ended right there. Because it is the end of the district, right?
Yes.
There's one house. But it's not, and so we have to make sure that you're not building a scale that is like all of a sudden overwhelming to all these houses that, are maybe more prototypical of the historic neighborhood. Because this house is still a historic home.
Yes.
It's just of a different era, and not the era that's mostly seen on the block. But we can't. That's why the rules exist in this kind of 50% rule.
Yep.
So we have to be protective of that, and it's this and a garage that's pretty good size and an minor accessory structure. So you're asking for a whole lot here. Yes, ma'am.
I also wanted to touch on the previously approved plan did have the additions to be brick, so it matched the existing materials on the house. The guidelines do recommend to use a material that is subordinate. So if it's brick, use lap siding. Just wanted to seek the DRC's input on that, if utilizing brick is appropriate in this context, or utilizing a lap material that is seen on the house and it's going to be used on the other accessory structures.
Could you jump to I think the cover sheet has a good 3D view.
And these black and white line drawings always feel a little heavier than, because brick doesn't make a black line. But I get it. It does look like heavy from here, but it's all painted white, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think that dulls it down a little bit, and where I do see a lot of black lines, really those end up being just shadow lines and subtle texture. So I don't mind it for this particular style of house here, but that's just me talking. I know why the guidelines recommend a different material, because you always want kind of that star of the show, the original house to kind of be set apart. I think the way you've arranged the addition with that kind of hyphen across the front, it does a lot of that, and the roof breaks there. You know, and I think we will see differences in the way it's built too. Just things like windows in old versus new and things like that. Are you replacing all the windows in the whole front of the house? Just the corner was shown and you're adding a window or something like that?
So you can just barely see the corner, one window to the right of that corner.
Yeah, the one
more-
right to the right of that
One
one.
more over is added.
That's added.
And then nothing's replaced, but obviously the demolished section gets new windows.
Yeah. So we'll see a little difference in just subtle details that will show us what's new and old, and
I agree with that, Tyler.
yeah. But
Mr. Chair, can we ask staff to show us a picture of the house as it
As it
stands
sits.
right now? For that reason.
see.
Where
I was snoozing their alert there.
yeah.
Yeah, this, is there a Google Street View or something that we can, there it is. Is there any way to zoom in a little? That's fine, just like that. I mean, yeah, see, the lines are very subtle, but the brickwork, if you get close,
Right.
it's profound. I mean,
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
it's
It is.
indicative. And those shutters didn't come on this house.
No.
Shutters are supposed to fit the window if they're, especially
Yep.
if so that's no loss to me.
No, and the door, if it were changed.
The
would be
prairie
no
door?
loss to me,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I even looking at this picture and I see this enclosed carport thing, I'm like, that it looks like a one of those Home Depot sheds. Like the construction wise, like it's
Yep.
T111 and a low slope roof with barely any over. I'm like, there is nothing sacred here.
Well, what I was going to say, if I agree with everything, but if you're looking at the street view now, I would have, for me speaking, some grace on counting some of that massing. I still think you've got too much, but since it's not changing the street view, the reason the district ended there, all these houses the county was going to tear down.
Yeah.
And we went for getting them saved, and that was what was owned, and that's where it stopped, because we just didn't
Couldn't get
do
momentum
the.
to get past.
Well,
yeah.
we just didn't do the hard work of trying to bring some other in the district. It was easy.
You had to move
get
fast,
the
too.
ones that yes,
Yeah.
the ones the county owned. So that was how that came to be. Another little fairy tale, but it's true.
Yeah.
That they were going to tear them down.
Yeah. So, I mean, trying to cull this back
Definitely.
as much as you can. Excuse me. I mean, you have to go through and just see what those priorities are and cull that square footage back. I think doing the pergolas, fine. It's still mass, but we can't
still
see it.
mass.
Sure.
And so at least we don't see it. But the square footage here, because we have to put ourselves in kind of a defensible position against the guidelines too.
Yeah.
And none of us, I mean, I can't rationalize 117.6%.
Sure.
Since somebody's going to come back and ask for 80, which we've never approved,
Yeah.
I don't think. And we're going to go, well, that's a lot. Well, you did 116. You know, and that bar really doesn't need to move.
Yeah.
I mean, it really
I'm-
needs to.
I'm in the 80 club, I guess.
I'm yeah, below 80 is, and I'd rather see 70.
And speaking to that, can you jump to the square footage calculation sheet? So the existing residence is 1,562 square feet. The addition, the wing that we're looking at here, the one that feels very shed-like, is like 516. So that goes from like 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. Half that gets us 1,000 square feet, but if we lop it off, then we get like 750. And the wing that was previously added is about 520, and so we're like, okay, 250 square feet the second we demolish this section that needs to be demolished. It really doesn't leave us much wiggle room. So
Yeah, that would be strictly to the rules.
Right.
But it doesn't take into account you are a ranch and it is a big lot.
Mhm.
So like I said, we're willing to, move the goalpost a little, but you
And so-
guys have to come this direction a long
sure.
way.
I'm trying to understand the way here. So if let's just call it 2,000 square feet or something, and we go half, maybe we are able to do 1,000 square foot addition.
I don't know. It's really based on the original rectangle of the house there.
Okay.
And like I said, I don't even know if it's fair to count the carport. I know that if staff was of the opinion like, well, if you built with that as part of it, they wouldn't count it, which was, I think, generous on their part.
And I have some agreement with staff, but historic zoning is what Rudy and I heard forever was do no harm. Well, you've already got this blight on the front of the house. So we are going to be correcting, in my mind, the
Yeah.
look
Putting something better back.
of the
Yes,
front. Yes.
absolutely.
So, and then, what you were saying, like, take the shutters off, find a door that's appropriate, keep more fabric of what is there.
In
But that still doesn't mean,
120%.
no.
What I would say, it might soften this old to new connection if that little hyphen between your front-facing gable and the original house was just considered a little differently materially.
Sure.
If that were siding or even,
Siding.
yeah, well, it could be siding, but there's different sidings for mid-century modern, so it wouldn't be out of character if it were vertical, like a vertical siding or something that's not T111, but like individual boards, like a nickel gap kind of thing. It's just that little hyphen.
Yeah.
And then you pick the brick back up so that there's just some, but that's, the brickwork, if you're going to repeat that, is a good bit of effort and would look really nice too. And I think you've got the geometry that does a lot of that for us already.
Right.
I think Madeline even commented on that. Like, yeah, the geometry's doing a lot of the making it subordinate without having to do it with materials so much. But
So
bring the size down. Start with that rectangle that's there.
sure.
And, are we going to see something between 70 and 80%? I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people may not be comfortable with that much. We're not going to vote tonight because that's not what this is for.
Right.
But, I know we've approved some at like 60, 62
Yeah.
on big lots. So,
So I'm just trying to do the math in my head quickly so I can best appropriately talk to the client about what we work with. So 1,500 square feet, 750s are kind of 50%. Let's say it's a little more, like 700 square feet or something. Or maybe 900 square feet. And we have an existing addition already of 520. We're kind of limiting ourselves to maybe 300 square feet more or 400 square feet more or so because we've demolished this section and we're replacing. Is that kind of, if we were able to find a floor plan that worked in that realm, that's kind of the direction we should head?
if assuming all that lands somewhere between 70 and 80%, we would consider it. But I don't
Right.
know that you'll get the
And I
votes to
wor-
approve something like that. You're
I
much more
worry
likely
the,
than 117.6.
Yeah. I worry that all we're really going to be able to do is almost just replace the wing that's already there. Like that wing is 500 square feet, so it's like all they really get is the primary wing again. Or sorry, yeah. And
Yeah.
we can't do much refresh on the inside. Yeah.
You'll look at it. And like I said, I think in that exercise of going through and figuring out how to cull this back, you may come back and go, we have tucked this thing as tight as we can get it. Here's was the goals is to get A, B, and C done for this client. And this is as tight as I can get it to do that. We would hear that even if it's 90%.
Sure.
But right now, I'm looking at, lots of square footage, and there's fluff.
I
Yeah.
think there's definitely areas to cut back.
Yes. So right now, even if you said, well, this is everything they want, I'd be like, well, you're gonna have to talk to them because this is too much.
Sure.
Yeah.
We want to hear your rationale for why this property needs an exception to the rules. And right now, we just want a rad, humongous, very spacious rooms, and I think the plan's beautiful. I mean, it's great. It's just big.
Yep.
So that's the best. And like I said, staff can help you think through some of those numbers a little bit more, but it just needs to be culled back. In terms of the garage and the other outbuilding, I think you're heading in the right direction for those. You've heard good feedback for those. It's just this size piece mainly is the hinge pin right now.
Yeah. And just so I'm clear about best next steps, if we make adjustments to this floor plan and the exterior design, et cetera, and then present that for the next HZA meeting, we can hear approval or not, or do we have to come back to the DRC in a?
You can, we can't
format
tell
like
you
this?
which one you have to or don't have to do.
Okay.
We always recommend, if it's going to be that drastic a change, I would recommend you come back to
Sure.
this meeting so that we can see it again and give you feedback. Because like I said, if you can only get so far and you really need to talk about it more, there's not a great forum for discussion at the voting meeting, because we just discuss after you make your comments and you don't have a chance to get any back and forth. This is the forum for that.
Understood.
So while that costs you a month, it's usually fruitful for most people to get that feedback. If we were talking about minor tweaks like, oh, I think your fascia should be 1x8 instead of 1x6,
Sure.
submit that. But we're talking about some pretty drastic changes here, so.
Can I ask one more, maybe one more question?
Yeah.
So, just as far as the massing goes, for bedroom 3 and 4, for instance, you've got a tub and a shower in both of those bathrooms?
The existing plan and the kind of previous
So the
edition?
gray is the gray,
Oh, yes, okay.
that's the addition, right?
You
That's-
might be looking at the previously approved plans.
Oh, is that the previous? Okay. So then, is this the new here?
That is a previously approved plan, but
Can
that
we
was,
close the,
Yeah, can you zoom
the
in
street
on that?
view and let's go to the floor plan here? Let's see here. One more.
That's
Right
the
there.
same one.
so
Okay.
that plan is a little bit similar on the addition, which is the top right corner, but it's tweaked a little. And they never did that plan you're looking at on the primary suite wing.
Got it.
So everything that's hatched, kind of, the L there is existing. Everything that's kind of white in the base plan is the new addition.
But you were asking about the shower tub combos in the
Yeah,
current?
so all that's done.
It's
Yeah.
all existing
Got it.
space.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have something?
And an option to consider is that you can always split up the application and come to historic zoning with the proposal for the accessory structures. And then you can come to design review the next month and then to historic zoning for a voting meeting the following month, should you want to get additional feedback on the proposal of demolition and the new addition.
Sure.
And that garage footprint, though, is contingent on the square footage of the house, footprint of the house.
I'll have to double check. I'm thinking
it might meet it already
I
anyways.
believe so.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only caveat to all that is double
Right.
check the numbers.
Right. I think our existing, including that old addition, is like 2,600 square feet.
So you could do
half would be-
13.
And that's what we show right now,
Okay.
the 1,300
So that,
square feet.
that could be okay.
So is it better for us to submit these as two packages then? Like, let's say so we could get approval on one and then.
It's whatever,
defer-
whatever you want to do. Staff might have a preference because it's work for them, but it's really your prerogative.
And so, okay, but if we presented all three structures at once, and is there a way to get approval on just
Yes.
one at a time?
Yes, oftentimes for something like this, we'd split it.
Okay.
I would split the grouping up and say, let's just do garage. I mean, we've done stuff like, we're going to approve a chimney pot and then deny the whole rest of the thing. So yes, we do split things up as needed. And for something of this scale with this many pieces, we
Sure.
would probably
Okay.
split it up. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. All right. We're going to take a little break. Let's come back here in 6:30, 15 minutes. We are adjourned for a moment. Recess, excuse me. Back into our agenda, please. All right, next up is item number 8, discussion of demolition of an accessory structure and new construction of an addition on a principal building at 234 4th Avenue North. Mr. Brandon Pretty. Good afternoon, evening, whatever it is. We've been here a little bit. Yeah. All right, if you'll give us an update. We've seen this before, but tell us what's new, please.
Yep. Thank you all very much. Brandon Pretty, 906 Studio Architects. This will be primarily looking at the addition piece. I know we had spoken through the demo before, and I think had a good discussion. We'll be submitting that for the voting meeting, but certainly wanted to have an opportunity for some more discussion on the addition. Running real quick through the things we had done. I know the concerns on the back were the ramp location. We've reoriented that so it's not kind of squishing that backyard quite so much. Actually made it a little bit smaller and reduced the amount of impermeable paving. The other big concern was the entry. We had a transom and some side lights. We really simplified that, pared that back. We've actually got 2 options for how to handle the canopy over that entry. We've got a gable shape that's a little more consistent with what's on the original house, and then a simple shed dormer as well, so wanted to talk about that. We broke down the massing of it. Again, just trying to keep the size. I mean, the size is what it is as far as the addition, but just visually holding that back as much as we can. Went to horizontal siding before we had vertical board and batten. Again, felt that was a little too accentuating the vertical a little much. We went something a little pared down with the horizontal. And probably the big thing, to me, probably the piece to discuss is the size of the addition. The size of the lot, the zoning is 40% landscape requirement. We're actually at 52.3% landscape. So it's a good sized lot, but as you can see on here, the addition is about 71% of the footprint. Now we think within the context of the size of this site, the lack of visibility of that addition off the street, we've got some images to show that. And probably the biggest piece is because of the way we're going to orient and put the site together to meet current zoning requirements, and with the floodplain, there's really not any chance for additional development in the form of an accessory structure or anything else. So this will kind of make up the bulk of what's going to be feasible on this site. So, understanding we're exceeding the guidelines of 50%, we just wanted to talk about that size, if that's appropriate. And I'll leave it at that and let you all ask questions.
Thank you. Let's hear from staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property located at 234 4th Avenue North is located in the downtown Franklin Historic District. The National Register considers the existing principal building contributing and the accessory structure non-contributing. The proposal to demolish the accessory structure would need to meet one of the criteria for demolition, which are if a building has lost its architectural and historical integrity and its removal will not adversely affect the district's historic character, if the denial of the demolition will result in an unreasonable economic hardship on the applicant as determined by the Historic Zoning Commission, and lastly, if the structural instability or deterioration of a property is demonstrated through a report by a structural engineer or architect with demonstrated experience working with historic structures. None of the criteria have been included within the application to support the demolition request. For the request to construct an addition to the principal building, the footprint exceeds the design guidelines recommendation. While the height, let me get up that rendering. While the height is subordinate, the massing of the building appears larger than the historic building. Option 1 of the proposed design appears to be a simpler roof form than option 2. The guidelines recommends designing doors and doorways to an addition to read as secondary in appearance and detailing to the historic building. The entrance that faces the driveway aligns with this guideline, but the large door on the rear of the addition doesn't. We'd like the DRC's input on the appropriateness of this rear door. There were several project considerations left on the project review, which will be sent to the applicant with the DRC recap. One other thing wanted to include was that the driveway appears to be widened, and more information is needed on this, and screening the parking may be needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then there were 3. Mary, do you have any comments yet? You still absorbing?
Well, the rear door, I think, looks a little bit divorced from the rest of the character, but you don't see it, so I'm kind of neutral about that.
Okay.
And in some of the pictures I was looking, it looks like the rear addition is below the side of the house a bit, and in others, it looks like it's taller. So,
It's, the peak of the roof is 16 inches below the
The main ridge of the main house?
Yeah, the main ridge
Okay.
of the main house there.
so that number 1 north elevation, that's just the
Yeah, I think he's
Say
saying
that-
from that
oh, from the high peak,
is
yeah.
16.
To me, that needs to come down
Where?
some.
What piece was that? I'm sorry.
The addition roof, she's
The
saying,
addition
because it
roof,
relates to that
the,
smaller
The
kind of
smaller-
mass that's parallel to it.
I think.
Okay.
It's closest to the
it-
view here.
In my mind, it would need to come down some.
Okay. Just
And part of
bring
it's a
that-
bearing height thing too. We're seeing 2 different eave heights.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I was about to ask, if it's really the eave height is making it look, if that eave height.
I think
It
it's
could
both.
be.
I think it's both. I mean,
Okay.
A little bit of both.
the 2D drawings always cheat our eye on the ridge height because it's receding, but
Yeah.
eave doesn't cheat.
And I mean, you haven't made the case, I guess, for demolition of the accessory structure, but I can't find it in here, but as I remember it,
I don't think
I
it's in
don't
this
see
package.
it as something that really contributes to the character.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had discussed that at the last meeting. The intent is going to be both the lack of architectural character, it's not contributing, but then also it's pretty significantly deteriorated. And then the big piece was it being in the floodplain would
Right.
negate, severely limit kind of how much work you'd want to do with it and then what you could do with it once you had done some repair work.
Okay. Angela, anything? Any thoughts?
Well, I think the relocation of the ramp works well. I think that's much better. I don't mind the back door. I'm thinking, is that for functional purposes? Is
Yes,
that for
ma'am.
the way it's going to
Yes, they want to use
need
that
to
as-
operate,
like-
access catering or whatever?
Yep.
So that doesn't bother me, and because it is on the back of the building. I think I can see what Mary's saying about that roof, the height on the addition in this, the way it's illustrated here just looks like it does need to come down just a drop. But it's not terribly objectionable.
No, I mean, I think it meets the guidelines. I think even as shown, it meets the guidelines, but that doesn't mean that massing and scale-wise that it sits well with the original house. The other house is fairly compact, so that's
Right.
part of what we're fighting is like, well, let's be super careful here because this just house doesn't hold a lot of mass to begin with. You said you're at 71%. We had this discussion earlier about sites bigger, all the same points, but and I think that makes sense that there might be some overage here because of that. This garage piece plays into it, right? because the garage is 50% or whatever, and maybe we'd be willing to give you some exception here because you won't have a garage if the demo's granted, but that would not preclude somebody from building an accessory structure later, even in the floodplain. It just can't be used for anything but storage or garage, whether this owner or the next.
The other piece of that too is the tree canopy requirements keep you from being able to, all those trees are on the back. It would be a
Yeah.
little more difficult to do
Yeah.
that back.
Well, and all that to say,
But yeah.
if down the road, whether this owner or the next came back for an accessory structure, we would get to review that. But what I was saying is there's no way for us to like monumentalize the idea that, oh, we're giving you this in lieu of that.
Yeah.
Because that's just, we don't make laws here, right? And we don't get into deeds and ordinances and things like that. Our guidelines say the 50% rule. You are on a little bigger lot, especially for this particular district. So I think some overage could be okay. But same speech the last applicant got. Cull this down as tight as you can and make your argument for why it really needs to be this size. And part of that argument is it's not a real big building to begin with. And so, we try to pass judgment on these projects based on their own merit of the building that's there, but it's oftentimes the smallest footprint buildings need the most help square footage wise to make them viable homes. But there's always that we don't want to cross that line where it just becomes overwhelming. I think that height thing's going to help, because if it is going to be oversized, well, don't make it,
Yeah.
don't
Also
balloon
tall.
it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, tall and oversized is just insult to injury.
Well, and I think what you said, that I just thought it looked too tall, but the eave height.
Yeah, the eave's a foot or 18
Yeah.
inches taller.
Is,
And that could be that you're doing a little different overhang to gain some of that and drop in bearing. Just look at it.
Yeah.
There's things you can do.
Franklin was also criticized. You remember when Franklin Tamara did the design workshop and brought people in from Seaside and other places. And I think this is a prime example that I hope we can address. They said that Franklin was not doing a good job at screening parking. And with what's going to be added, to me,
Yeah.
this could sure fall in that category without some work.
Yeah, and looking at that site plan, if the staff can pull that up, there's these hatched areas that I think are existing pavement, some of it. But like the hatched area that's right when you come past the curb cut, the biggest one there. Like if that were not asphalt and were a planter, that's a big deal. We typically don't allow parking past the front plane of the building, and that car there parked parallel would be past the front plane. So, I was looking at your parking requirement, it says 9.2, you're at 11. Is there a way to reconfigure that or lose a spot? I know that's not what people want to hear, but we don't allow parking past the front plane.
Yeah, and I think we can shift that. Certainly, that hatched area makes a lot of sense to just become a landscape.
Yeah, and plant some real.
Yeah, do some plantings,
That'd be
something
nice.
with some height. The other hatch, I will say the hatched area above that is adjacent to the accessible space, so that's
Right.
one that we actually have to.
Yep.
But I believe we can do something, even if it's on the other side of that sidewalk, again, to put some plantings in to screen that. I think this site layout gives us a lot of opportunity to screen it, much more so than what's there now.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about if we're looking at the first set of 3D renderings, there is a break in that roof line. I think staff brought this up. This has a break. It's kind of a two-piece stepped gable roof there. And then there's another option that's a little more simple that's further down in the like Revit 3D.
Yeah, I realized this when I was looking at, I think I dropped the wrong one in. The intent is to break that massing up. It's not to have this.
It's not this.
The other piece here is, this was a previous version where we had the door centered. We moved that entry off center here again to try to, I don't know if it's a word or not, but deformalize it a little bit as an addition, so it wasn't competing with the main. So those colored renderings are accurate to what we're proposing as opposed to
Well,
this.
what I was going to say, if we look at the 3D rendering again, that one. So either variety there, even though the roof's a little more complicated here, it's still fairly straightforward. What I do like about it is the part that can be seen from coming from the cemetery will look like it's coming down in scale, which I think is a good thing. Even at the risk of making the roof a tiny bit more complicated, I think it looks like another kind of step back, smaller little addition, which I think is a good thing. But like in this view, the roof doesn't look as tall for
Yeah.
some reason, and it might just be the perspective
Yeah.
or
To your
whatever.
earlier point about elevations versus perspective, I think
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing here.
It pushes it.
Yeah, push down a little bit. And is there any preference anybody has over this extended eave as the overhang over the door versus the one above it, which is this little gable on brackets? They're both on brackets.
Yeah, either one.
Or could it even
That
be-
looks very colonial to me, and the other one looks a little more bungalowish. If you go back, it looks like
So you like
that
the
looks like
shed-
a Williamsburg kitchen
Right.
building.
But if
Which is not a bad thing, it's just what it looks like.
If it were just an awning overhang, that'd push it down even more, pushing down such a good professional word. It would lower it
I'm
even
following, yeah.
more. Do you
Mhm.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So
And I
look at that.
agree, the other one does look like a colonial
It's pretty.
Williamsburg. It's beautiful, but
Yeah. So work on the size. Make your case for the garage. The one thing in that first pathway to demolition talks about that its removal won't adversely affect the district, and I look at that building. I'm like, if that weren't there, I think it might do the neighborhood a favor.
I think that too.
That might be
Yeah.
rude, but
Right.
I'm like,
And
it's not.
It might be interesting to know what it was originally built for.
Yeah.
I mean, cannot imagine there's.
There was another big building
found-
back there, right?
There was actually from what I remember from the Sanborn, there was a building in front of that, closer to the road, is that right?
So it was behind.
Yeah, it was behind.
That's right.
so
That's what I
I'm
remember
not sure
now.
if those
Yeah.
were ever there at the same time, or if one was built and then they built the other one.
I think that they both were there at the same time, but then over time, the one in the front got demolished, and then the one that is existing has stayed, but it's been there since like the late 40s.
Do you know the original intent of that building? What it
I
was
don't.
used?
Well, there are tracks for an old garage door, like where that kind of funny-looking French door infill thing
Yeah.
is, so I'm assuming it was a garage. I mean, that big opening's been there. I can't imagine what else they'd have done with
Yeah,
it.
I'd be curious to see on the Sanborn map if it was enough delta between that building and the one in front of it that a garage door was feasible, or
Yeah.
if, who knows?
No, that's a good question.
Because it could have been storage, it could have been some not really a farm, but some type of implement storage or
Yeah.
something where you're keeping. Interesting. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Mary, anything?
I think in general, it's
Yeah.
It's good.
certainly looking like a good project.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Item number 9, discussion of partial demolition of principal structure and new construction and addition at 132 3rd Avenue South. Mr. Hathaway.
Yes, sir. Glad you guys are still here. Numbers are dwindling.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting us speak. This, it's a unique situation that we need your insight. We have a client, Cornerstone Church, that is next door to this property and wants to purchase the corn house there at 132 and add a new sanctuary to the back of it. And that's the idea here. So they're in a due diligence stage. So we didn't do a full design. We felt like we just needed some basic feedback from you guys to see if this was allowable, acceptable to you guys. So I wanted to go through what we're proposing and get your feedback if I can.
Okay.
So this first sheet just explains to you how this site is really accessible to parking. A lot of the members of the church already park in the garage that's across from Puckett's. There's some people that park in the garage that's behind the old and now new City Hall. And then, of course, there'll be 200 spaces in City Hall about the same time as this project would be complete. If you can go to the next page. So this is a diagram of the original house being in red. That's about 3,096 square feet. And then the two additions, the one in the back side, that section, I think I saw that on the Sanborn maps. We're trying to confirm its age. It's probably somewhere in the late 60s, early 70s. The piece between it, we can't assess exactly what that age is, so we're still trying to figure that out. And then in the bottom side where it says concrete, that's the big vinyl cover that's covering that whole area. So when I looked at numbers, so with the existing house, if you took the existing house plus that those two yellow sections and the big concrete covered area, that is a total of 6,686 square feet. If you look at that in comparison to the site, that's about 38% site coverage on this lot. If you look at the concrete area and those two yellow areas as if they were added to not quite 50 years old to the original house, then that would be about 116% addition to the size of the original footprint of the house. So as you can tell, the current condition is filling most of that backyard of that site with covered space. We look at this as a unique urban condition. If you think about the site, it's not a typical residential area where you would want to have more open space in the backyard, et cetera. This is urban, like the new City Hall is urban and some of these other buildings along the way. We've got the courthouse right behind us. We've got offices to the left and then, or to the right, and then to the left is the church. So I think we'd like consideration for a different square footage calculation if that's possible. If you go to the next page, that shows you the relationship to the church, the existing church. They would like to, like I said, put a sanctuary in the back. Currently, their sanctuary, their chapel holds about 180 to 200 spaces. They have about 400 that attend on a Sunday, so they would like to create a 350 person space for that new sanctuary space, and then potentially make a connection between the two properties. So you go to the next page. Those are just photographs. You've seen the corn house and how beautiful it is. Unfortunately, it's really grown up around it, so a lot of the beauty of it's been covered up with kudzu and other interesting plants along the way. If you go to the next sheet, more of the photographs of that back area, pretty rough back area. So what the church is proposing is to greatly improve the look and feel of that area. They'll landscape that courtyard, make it very accessible and beautiful space. Next page. So as we're looking at, the blue area is what we're proposing as an addition. If you look at that, there's two ways to look at it. One is, if we look at that blue area relationship to the original house, we're about 102 square feet of the original house in that footprint. If you look at it relative to that addition, in that previous image that had the red and the yellow together, and we add the additional area that we would need to have for this new sanctuary, we would be at 45% of the original house plus this addition footprint, with a 38% coverage of the site. So we would like to look at it from that perspective in order to be able to do what they need to have the 350 number sanctuary. This is also, we'll look at the next page. That's an idea of what, if we did this as a 2-story elevation. In talking to the church, they are very much open to any ideas on how we can make this work, because it's just such a natural, they want to stay downtown. They don't want to be a mega church. They're not planning on making this 2,000 seat kind of facility. But, we need your consideration to be able to accomplish what we want to do. The next sheet was looking at, well, what if we bury a portion of that sanctuary, put it down below ground, and then just have a single story above, so it reads more like a garden house or something to the back of the house. The idea would be that in between these two forms, you'd have a connector that would be like a glassed in porch in between. And then the detail of that, totally open to that. We're showing somewhat of a folk Victorian kind of feel, more of a relaxed Victorian. We know that the Cornhouse is very much a high-end, high-style, Queen Anne, Victorian kind of feel. So we don't feel like we need to do that level of detail. And again, we don't want to distract from the main house. But we are proposing showing just some real basic folk Victorian kind of detail. The center section where it's got the Gothic sort of arch, right now we're proposing that be a little pop out, so it creates a little vestibule to come into the church, and then have glass windows around the outside to bring natural light. The way that would work in that particular form, we would have a balcony that you would walk into, and then you walk downstairs into the main sanctuary. So those windows would become high windows inside to bring natural light into this space. And then we'll have an elevator probably in that connector that would get people that are in wheelchairs down to the main sanctuary level. So we're excited for the opportunity to be able to bring an expansion for the church into this area and this site. It's a natural for them to be right there next door. But we realize there's a lot of considerations that we need from you guys to give us some feedback on maybe how to accomplish this.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We want to thank the applicant for coming to DRC early on in the process to seek feedback. So the property is located at 132 3rd Avenue South, and it is located in the downtown Franklin National Register Historic District. The contributing building was constructed in 1897, and larger additions were constructed at later on, but their age was not provided within the application. Should the additions be under the historic threshold, then it may be appropriate to demolish, but more information is needed to confirm this. The proposed addition exceeds the recommended addition square footage, which is 102% of the historic footprint. The addition also exceeds the recommended 35% of the lot coverage, which is proposed to be 38% of the lot. The proposed additions do not appear to be architecturally cohesive to the existing building, as there are aspects of the addition that reads as more Gothic than the Italianate building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mary, you have any opening thoughts?
let me see. I think the idea to put part of it underground is a great approach. Will you see the front of this church from the street anywhere?
Well, the idea is we wouldn't extend it beyond the face of the side of the cornhouse.
Yeah,
So
no.
I can't argue that you'll see a little bit of it as you're walking by
Right.
or, from an angle, but from just the front of the house, you won't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
How do I want to say? That part of it sort of bothers me. You just are so used to seeing churches traditionally in historic districts have a presence on the street. But there is a church building next door.
And that's the idea, that we've got that
Yeah,
really beautiful church next
Church
door
next
with its
door,
own
right.
tower and all that, we didn't want to distract from that, frankly.
so I think would like to see it in the context of everything. I think the staff's comments, maybe there's a way to, I think it is pretty simple, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a way. But I think you're gonna have to get somewhere within the lot coverage but I was just thinking of the one that you worked on. I don't know St. Paul's, how much they have, but do you know how much lot coverage there ended up being?
I don't remember the number. I mean,
I
we didn't
don't
change,
either.
we didn't change the lot coverage because we went up versus out.
Right, but it might be worth, that would, even though that wasn't in the overlay, it would let people understand
Sure,
how the coverage would look.
yep.
Let me see. What else would I say? I do believe that those two additions are not old. I don't think it's fair to count the open air covered as covered lot.
Yeah,
That doesn't really make sense to me. It's like a permanent canopy, but it doesn't have closed-in sides. I don't think we
Yeah.
count that.
We count porches, and screen
Yeah.
porches, and covered
that's
anything.
right.
Well,
We do
this
now,
is-
but this
this
is
like a
interesting.
vinyl- or what kind of cover is it?
It's
Yeah,
a
it's-
very large covered porch.
Is it a vinyl?
It's like a vinyl, yes, ma'am.
It's got a big,
But it's a,
big aluminum cage under it.
It's
I
a
mean, it's a,
Yeah,
permanent-
uh-huh.
it's a
ceiling
big party
structure.
tent. Yeah,
Right.
permanent tent.
right, but it's connected. You can't just, pull it up
Yeah,
very
yeah.
easily.
So I'm not just saying, no, this will never work. The other, I'll just say something, since we've got church members here, that always kind of gets me is to have a historic building that already needs work. It's covered with aluminum siding, but you're going to build something else, but the historic resource is in trouble itself. So I'll just put that out there.
Oh, and I
That's
think
my
the intent would be to fix up that original house.
Yeah,
you know,
that, that being part of this project would matter to me, that you're hooking something on. And, okay, thank you.
Angela?
I agree with Mary that putting part of it underground seems to help with the scale, and that does seem like a good direction to go in. And I just wonder, is there a way to tie it in a little better to the main house without it doesn't have to mimic it exactly, but this seems to be a little bit too much of a departure
Okay.
from what's already there,
Okay.
in my opinion. And this is just a first, reaction
Sure.
type of a thing. I do like this glass connector. I think that's an attractive addition. You mentioned that at some point you would want to connect it to the church. Is that what, did you mention that?
Yeah, and I think
What are your
the
thoughts?
conversation was like a canopy, like an awning that would connect those two.
Like a breezeway.
A breezeway, yeah, just
Yeah.
something so you could walk from the original church.
Into the chapel
Into
part.
the chapel part.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Years ago, these two buildings were owned by Christ Community Church, and back in the 80s when it was there. And off the back of our building, there's a walkway that goes directly to Biscuit Love that's still connected with those doors. And so, you know, sort of, we are a church grandmother plant of Christ Community Church, and so we go way back with their history. And so the idea of connecting those two properties again is part of a cherished vision, so.
And I think mentioning the parking, which I don't think we see as much of an issue now on Sundays, but at that time, it was,
Disaster.
it was a disaster. I was calling the church saying caregivers can't get in the driveway. I mean, it was,
A mess.
so I understand y'all mentioning, but that to me today won't be a concern.
Yeah, I went out a couple of Sundays ago, and there was like 140 spaces still available in the parking
Yeah.
garage across from Puckett, so
Right,
there's plenty of parking,
right.
for sure.
Good.
That time of day, yeah. Anything else, Angela?
No?
No. I think this underground thing's intriguing as well. You know, I don't know how creative you can get, but that, you know, if there's some type of courtyard out in front of these doors that has finished space under it, that's not footprint above necessarily, but it might give you some back of housey things that
Gotcha.
gobble up. Because I think my goal, as we kind of weigh this against the guidelines, is it is too big, but you need a finite amount of space to fit people and egress them and all the things, right? So it's like, okay, we got to get, there's a place we got to get to. How do we get there? And it might, because you're underground, that might afford you some flexibility where it's like, well, we may pave a courtyard out front that's got some appurtenances that maybe aren't your A+ space, or maybe it is. Maybe it's stage or something. I have no idea. But, you know, think of those things and try and cull this footprint down as tidy as you can get it. I mean, and then, you know, things, these are early drafts, but, you know, should the roof pitch match here with the gable that's facing us? They're a little different pitch. It's just those little things that start to tie the old architecture to the new. You know, the Gothic arch doors, you know, maybe those just need to be simplified or just need to go away and just be a cross on the side or something simplified that just ties it. Because as soon as I see that, I'm like, well, there's like, got this steep roof, which is sort of Tudory, which is sort of Gothic, and then you got a Gothic arch, and I'm like, well, but it's not Gothic because it's got these wings that are low slung. So, you know, but you're not there yet. You're just trying to figure out how we get to this point. So I think it's interesting. You know, it's a pretty grand house. I was thinking, man, what a parsonage. But you know, I think I say that in joking, but also it's like, well, if this is going to become maybe church property, how does this house and this building not overwhelm the house itself and the old church?
Right.
I think is important to consider here because it's all going to be a unit now. So it's an interesting question to think about how it looks and how it ties together and what you can see between them. And it comes back to that courtyard and landscaping, and making something of the space in between is probably just as important here as what you're building. Because if you're going to connect them, that has to be really thoughtful too, because I don't know that we've had people come and say, we want to take one parcel and connect it to another one. Go, I don't know that I've seen that since I've been on the board. So we'd have to
I've
think about
seen
it.
I mean, my worst fear is thinking about Academy's old lower campus. That is like my work when I think about taking an old house and hooking more of an institutional use to it. So we don't want to go there for sure. And I would also say, and I think you'll remember this, I would not dare consider a stage outside. That,
No.
we've been there too with downtown.
Right.
So,
Right.
But I think here too, like, the house is, I mean, stylistically, it's all this wood and filigree, and it's fine detail.
it's
And
iconic.
yeah, when you go to the back, it's not like we can put up a brick building back there.
Right.
It's just going to be like, well, that just doesn't go, and it just feels heavier, and that whole subordinate thing. So, figuring out how to detail that thing to where it looks like it was some old guest house or a carriage house or something, and
Which
and-
would mean is bringing down the scale of the roof and the, I mean, it would,
Yeah.
it would be,
But I'm not sure. I mean, even if it's big and long, as long as we can only see it in vantage points where it looks small, it's like if I can see between the buildings and it looks like the size of a carriage house, I can't tell that it goes all the way
Yeah.
behind. And on the other side, can I see between the courthouse and that? It's really a wall, right? They've got like a bullpen. So it's curating the views to what the public can see and understanding, you know, and that's kind of the next level of development way down the road. But I think there's some viable options. I mean, you're probably trying to answer the question, could this work if we buy it? So, and we can't answer that for you, but we can tell you that what we're seeing, I think it's a little big. That's going to be a hard sell for square footage. But if you can be creative with that underground,
And I think
you might get to a size that fits 350 people.
what you said about carriage house inspiration,
Yeah.
I think that's a good thought. And I guess I have given up on the idea this will be a home. I mean, it just, where it is, it's not happening.
I said it'll be some of the parsonage
Yeah.
with the sanctuary attached to the back.
What would you think about the lower section there on that roof plan, you know, on the four corners, if that was a mansard type, flat roof? That's what the front porch is on the cornhouse. The side porch is a mansard. You know,
It's
if we
interesting.
took that idea.
I think that would be,
It could. I mean,
Better
it
option.
runs the risk of maybe being like so formal for what is supposed to maybe look like an outbuilding.
Right.
But you know, if you're trying to put a lot of mass back there, you got to do something to break it up.
Yeah, that'll
It's
help.
got to have something.
Right.
And I've seen some. I mean, very pretty flat roofs with just a nice cornice, and that can give you some mass without any height
Yeah.
and not that big fascia. But I think we, you know, bring what you guys want to do, and we'll see it. And if it includes that, you know, sort of mansard section with a flat roof on it, let's see it. But it might be too ornate for if we're trying to sell it
Yeah.
as we're trying to keep
to
this
Consider that.
scaled down in terms of detail and size.
Because really the only thing you're going to see is that left side. The other side you can't see because there's no room to even get around there. The back you can't see because you got the courthouse back there and that big brick
Mhm.
wall that's behind it.
Okay.
I'm trying to look up a picture.
Well, and there's
I think we went through such a bad mansard roof period in Brentwood that it kind of made you.
Yeah, I'm not typically.
A lot of
fan
them weren't
it
done
myself.
well.
No.
A lot of.
No.
just a little piece of mansard right
Yes, that's, yes.
I wouldn't
and
even brought it
that's-
up if it wasn't some precedence on the front of the house, but
Yeah.
just trying to figure out a way to not have a roof on those corners so it reduces that massing.
That's the idea.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a mansard on the bay.
Yep.
Just, I mean, it's flat, but it's got a little mansard vertical section there. Yep. It's very, very subtle.
Yeah.
But those are the details that make this house.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, it's all those little
Absolutely.
things. And like I said, I think the land design is going to be big because, there's kind of this hedgerow and it has a fence. Is there a fence inside the hedgerow? I don't know. But those
At the very front, I think so.
those barriers, I mean, if you formalize some of those with site walls and fencing that may not align with church vision in terms of how open or closed you want it, but those things can help create layers between the road and in addition that can be helpful.
Yeah.
In there, we're not supposed to consider landscaping because that could change anytime, but a solid wall or a fence that's more permanent than a plant can sometimes make a difference. So, consider the landscaping and hardscape, and like I said, the relationship between these two is, to me, as intriguing as the building.
And when you bring something in the context of everything around it would help.
Yeah, we will.
Yes,
Yep.
that's true.
Anything else, anybody?
No, that's good.
Anything we didn't talk about yet?
I think that's the biggest concern and question we have. We're just trying to be good stewards of the church's money, and we don't want them to engage in a property that they buy it and they can't really do anything with it,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and in response to the other elevation that was 2-story, I think this house could stand up to a 2-story addition, but not at that girth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It can't be big and tall,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It's got to be,
Right.
it's got to be one or the other.
That's true.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
think the
true.
1-story is going to have enough height. You're going to be fighting, because it's so broad, you're going to be fighting ridge all the time, which is why we're talking about these flats.
Yeah.
So I think it's just more, you have a better shot getting where you need to go with the commission and just all of the above
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
sticking to try and do the 1-story thing. So, all right.
All right.
Thank y'all very
Awesome.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. I believe this is our last item. Item number 10, discussion of a retroactive demolition on an accessory structure at 303 Adams Street. Mr. Brandon Pretty.
Hello. So really, this is a bit of a unique situation where we had, this is David Swift. I made the cardinal sin of misspelling my owner's name in 48-point font on the front of this, putting the wrong word. So David Swift, I apologize for that. It's right on the other pages.
Well, they'll just say it was auto-corrected.
There we go.
It's not your
I'll
fault.
blame AI, yeah. So this is, like I said, unique situation. And, full disclosure, we've got a few different pieces of this site that we're going to get into later, not tonight. This one, we really wanted to focus on the removal of that structure, which is shown here. And I'm going to let David speak to that really quickly. But frankly, it was a mistake. It was a mistake made. His heart was in the right place. I understand he had a concern. But at the end of the day, removed it without going through proper channels, without doing what he's supposed to do, without going through the process. And we're just trying to figure out what the next steps are and what that looks like. So I'll let him speak more to the demo and what was the motivation.
Okay, Mr. Swift?
Yeah. So I came back through here a good bit a couple years ago. I don't know if y'all remember or not, but we did that largely ourselves and have realized that is not the way. That is not a good way to go about this. So we demolished this building, which we have photos of here. This entire house has been a different we did not fully understand the magnitude of the historic everything that comes with this. However, we finally decided to get some pros who have gone through this, which is why Brandon is here. So I made a mistake, and we knocked this down. We knocked this accessory structure down. We're just trying to. I knocked it down out of abundance of caution that you'll see in some photos here. We've got a pool in the backyard. The roof on this was head height with my daughter and her friends who swim in the pool, obviously, and are the main vacators of that. However, obviously should have gone about that a different way. So I'm trying to just figure out, I think ultimately just sort of next steps and what is the proper way with you all's guidance, with Brandon's guidance of how to kind of come to a respectful remedy on this, on however we need to go about it. And so I relinquish any knowledge of how to do this. So I'm here to listen.
Okay.
So good to be here.
Thank you. All right. Anything else you want to say, Brandon?
No, we've got some other info, but we can get into that once we start talking.
Okay. Let's hear from staff, please.
Thank you. So the historic accessory structure, which was listed as contributing to the Adams Street Historic District, was demolished at 1303 Adams Street without a COA. The proposal for discussion today is for the retroactive demolition of the structure, but staff would also like to note, as the applicant did, that there are a number of other items on the site which will also require retroactive review and approval, as they did not align with the approved COAs. The structure was noted within the National Register listing as a contributing circa 1940 frame garage with a metal gable roof and can be seen on aerials from 1949. The garage most recently featured a frame structure and metal gable roof. Staff previously informed the applicants that demolition of the structure would not be supported by the guidelines unless one of the three criteria was met. The guidelines state that demolition can only be approved if one of the three criteria are deemed met by the Historic Zoning Commission: loss of its architectural and historical integrity, and if its removal will not adversely affect the district's historic character, if the denial of demolition will result in an unreasonable economic hardship, lastly, if structural instability or deterioration of the property is demonstrated through a report by a structural engineer or architect with demonstrated experience working with historic structures. Since the structure was demolished, its historic and structural integrity cannot be assessed to provide a determination to the Commission to justify demolition as required by the guidelines. Without this information, a positive recommendation cannot be provided. The information of the limited National Register historic listing does align with what the structure consisted of when it was most recently existing, and does not appear to have lost its historic or structural integrity. Feedback about the demolition of the structure in light of the approval consideration is needed. Staff would also like to note that if demolition is not approved, the existing structure could be rebuilt, and it would not be more legally non-conforming than the site was previously.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody want to jump in, volunteer on this one?
I'll let you take the lead.
Me?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm too new on this.
well, we've had some of these in the past, and they're not fun. They're always, we're always caught in this position of like, well, what are we supposed to do? Our guidelines would have said to maintain it, keep it, repair it, work on it, come with a proposal to work on it. Or if you have rationale within our three versions of demo to come prove one of those points. And, none of that was done. So I don't even know what to say except that we have a historic building that's just gone. This particular structure was not necessarily high styled or anything, so a lot of people may have seen it and just went, well, it's just like a utility building that, and it was sort of built like that. I see whatever cedar posts, and it was rustic, but it's also indicative of buildings in that neighborhood of that era, which is the reason that we save stuff like this. So it's sad to see it go. I never know, like, what we're even supposed to say or do, except that, eventually it'll come to a voting meeting and we'll vote whether you've proven your point that it should have been demoed or not, and then I don't even know what happens after that, to be honest. It goes beyond us to other city staff, beyond even historic. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. There's nothing to look at except a couple pictures here. And I mean, I can tell it had a couple little issues here that I can even see in the picture, but we can't do a real analysis, so it's going to be almost, or it is impossible to even get one of those three things satisfied to prove demo, because there's nothing to base any report on.
What
So
happens if you do nothing?
if we do nothing,
Yeah.
I think it goes to city staff beyond historic staff, because they have a notice of violation. Is that correct? Has there been a notice of violation issued?
Yes,
Yes, there has. So eventually this will have to come to a voting meeting, and we will vote one way or the other for a retroactive approval or not. And then if we vote for an approval, then you've already demoed it, the work's done, and things move on. If we vote to not retroactively approve it, then it will go to city attorney. I don't know. Who's it go to? Codes?
We can double check on that, but it is up to the commission. We have confirmed with our zoning administrator that if the commission does find it appropriate that the building needs to be rebuilt in the same location, same measurements, then it can go back exactly how it was, and it would just basically be an in-kind replacement, and it can legally go back.
Exact shape, format, parts and pieces.
Location,
Yes. Little cedar columns.
If-
Yes, go ahead, Brandon.
That kind of speaks to one of the points I wanted to discuss is, to me, item 3 for the criteria for demolition, the trick with this is because of how low it is, or how low it was, it's nowhere near meeting code. So we really wouldn't be able to rebuild it back to how it was. And I think if I got in a time machine and we were having this conversation a few months ago, we can get, and my plan is to pull some budget information to understand what it would have taken to raise that and reconfigure it to make it code compliant, but I think there's a part where it pretty quickly becomes,
Well, and I'm not sure you have to bring it.
No, you
You
don't.
wouldn't have had to bring it to code compliance. They would have said, well, you can maintain that, and you could have painted it and replaced siding, and if there were sharp edges, those could have been mitigated with different flashing and different roofing details. Those type of things would have been allowed with your legally non-conforming structure. Is that all the staff is going, uh-huh.
well, but I feel like we've, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, we've gotten into some of these before where we did have areas where we had to bring it up to current code. There's a threshold.
Yeah,
I have
if you're
in my head,
doing, if you're doing
50% of the perceived
improvements.
value, so.
Yeah, and I don't
or
know
of
what
the
that
assessed
line
value.
is.
So whatever that is, I know, like, for instance, when this isn't a perfect analog, but when we went and did the work on the side barn over at the Hayes House, there were things we had to do to bring that up to code. So I'm not sure how that would have worked here, where, this isn't, hey, it's, 6'11" instead of 7 feet. I think you had, as you can see in that section, you had pieces that were very, very low and created some danger. You had clearances inside that were, I don't even think they were 6 feet. So,
Was that edge of the building built underground originally?
no, what happened is it was built, there was an existing grade, and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, there was a pool constructed several years ago. That
Yeah,
brought the
so I
grade
mean,
up, and
we're not,
then-
so, yeah, I mean, that's a self-inflicted wound there,
Well, it's inflicted by, this is a pool that was built 20 years ago too, so this
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not something he did.
I
Now,
understand, but, it's a hard argument to go, well, this thing was all of a sudden underground. I'm like, well, it's been underground for over a decade. How old's that pool?
The one that's there, well, the one that was there previously, I'm not sure. damaged in the last couple of years.
Right, and we will get to that in another meeting, apparently.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is, like I said, it puts us in a hard spot because I really I don't have anything to say or even respond to aside from it got torn down and, bring what paperwork and pictures you have and we'll just take a vote at a voting meeting. I mean, is there anything else to say? I mean, and like I said, we would have, before it was torn down, we would have seen some proposal for, we want to tear it down for these reasons, and we would have pointed you to the same three things, except at that point, you could have had somebody come out and do an assessment of something that was standing. We don't have that opportunity now. And, we represent the community, and so, you've robbed the community of the opportunity to see and take notice of what you wanted to do with the building, whether tear it down or rehab it or whatever. So it's unfortunate. Do you have anything you
Well,
want
I
to add?
just want to say, this building really did matter. I do think it's part of the story of that whole neighborhood. And I get what you're saying about the low ceiling heights, but, it did serve a purpose, does tell the story, and it's actually a very cool building, even in this state, and it's unfortunate.
But
I don't know what could have been, I mean, I agree with you. I
We'll
don't
never know.
what- It's a real conundrum.
And then, did you all say there's other active approvals we need to?
Well, so there was a COA that was, what was that, a year ago? Last year, maybe before that. They had an existing COA based on some additions on the back and then made some modifications to those without going back and updating that COA. So we're going to do that.
It's not in this package yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see those.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll definitely come back.
And like I see, is that concrete formwork, all that site work stuff, I think that was noted on there as other elements that may or may not have been approved. I don't remember,
Yes,
it's been so long.
That was work that was done on the pool. That was all, and correct me if I'm wrong, that work on the pool was approved. The two pieces, there is it was the pool house piece. There were a couple modifications to the gable on the back. And then there's a pergola that had a little more solid roof
With a
added,
roof
which
on the
changes
pergola.
the
Yeah.
nature of what that is. And then a fire pit circle. that
Yeah, I remember
I think
seeing
was added.
quite a few iterations of the pool house,
Yeah.
and I don't remember approving anything on it.
The-
But I could be wrong. It's just been a while.
No, we
Okay.
had there was a COA for.
For
a lot
pool
of-
house?
It was a unique situation where a COA was issued because it was a illegally non-conforming structure. So basically, the commission reviewed it to recommend that the building could stay on site and for them to seek a variance because it was not legally established on the site previously. So,
Yeah,
but though
and that
no
was way
changes were
before the
approved.
Swifts bought it.
Yeah, basically
That's
the
right.
secondary accessory structure is that pool house on the back of the site.
It's like
Very
never
back.
permitted ever,
Yeah, and that was,
Yeah.
again, that was built
way
20-some
before you
years
all.
ago.
Yeah, understood.
So there
Okay,
was
I
part of
remember
this
that now.
work, yeah,
But I
yes.
remember seeing some pool house extension parallel to the lot line that was a bunch of
Yeah, we
different
tried
roof.
some stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
then that was gonna be phase two.
It was very cool. I'm not sure we ever approved any of that because it was a lot, but okay.
Yeah, these are all just windows.
All right. Anything else? I mean, bring your
Yeah.
documentation, what you can, and
And we're in the process of pulling that together. There were some digital scans done, and I'm trying to figure out how to extract those files and turn it into discernible information.
okay.
And I just say, sir, Swift, right?
Yes, Mr. David Swift. Yes.
I said earlier today, historic preservation's a team sport. And if everybody did this everywhere, we wouldn't have historic districts here. So I hope you can just appreciate and give some respect to what it's taken to get to where we are.
Okay, thank you.
Your house is listed as a contributing property on the National Register because the organization I work for paid to do the survey. It's just, it takes a lot, so.
Yep.
And I agree, that building, I think, could have been so cool. But
Yeah.
Understood. All right. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. All right, let's go to our staff announcements, please, before we adjourn.
July 13th is the historic zoning, for the July 13th Historic Zoning Commission, the application deadline is this upcoming Friday, June 26th. So not this Friday, but the next. This Friday, there will be a Juneteenth celebration at the Bicentennial Park hosted by the African American Heritage Society, and it begins at 11 a.m. And then on Saturday, June 20th at Bicentennial Park, there will be an unveiling of the Williamson Remembers markers at 10 a.m. And then, hot off the press, in front of you all
love it.
these are the postcards that are being mailed out later this week to all of the property owners and residents that live in the Historic Preservation Overlay. And so on the front of the postcard, it's a circa 1918 photo from a World War I bond drive parade. So wanted to lean into all the flags, it being the 250th anniversary this year, and also just letting everyone know that they're in the overlay, and to call us if they have any questions before any kind of alterations, additions, demolition, so.
All right. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everyone, for helping.
I think this is
Thank you,
great.
members.
Yeah, I love it.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Without any.
I was going to, when we adjourn, I'll say
Okay.
something.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.